Hey everyone, this is What If Fan bringing you another part of What If There Was a Different Luffy. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name in the description below. Please make sure to support the creator. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 201, Shiki 01. Third Person POV. Calm Belt, first half of Grand Line. In some sky islands, not being Skypiea and near the East Blue, a birdman carrying a large polar bear by the arm arrived at the islands from a distance. Captain! Can we stop? I can't take it anymore. Beepo complained, crying while looking quite dazed, being carried by Luffy through the sky for the last few days at several kilometers per hour. Luffy looked at him and let go. Beepo, I'm going to fight someone powerful here. I need you to take some distance because this fight will be quite dangerous for you. Luffy commented while looking at the islands. Beepo, falling, quickly used Jeppo and looked at the captain with a bit of fear. Someone powerful? What place is this? He finally noticed the islands flying in the sky. This is where Shiki, one of the relics of the past, has been hiding in recent years. Luffy said with a smile. Shiki? The Golden Lion? Beepo realized at that moment, knowing the records of his fruit. Yes. I will fight him, you take some distance and stay until the fight is over. Luffy said, preparing to head to the islands. Wait a moment, Captain. You can fight against Shiki? He was very powerful, and why am I here, you still haven't told me? Beepo exclaimed, but when he saw Luffy's look at him. I'm sorry. He shouted again. Why are you apologizing? Luffy murmured and went back to speaking. Listen, Beepo. He is now just a shadow of his past, he has lost much strength, in addition to his age, when he cut his feet. Luffy commented and without waiting for Beepo to respond, he raised his wings and shot towards the islands. Luffy quickly approached the place and looked at the floating structures, thinking how he could lure Shiki out of them. Shiki was sitting in an empty room when suddenly, he looked up, feeling a very strange presence in the air. What is this? Someone is invading my territory? He murmured with a slight growl. Before Shiki could react, an explosion of Conqueror's haki came from the sky. Shiki! Come out from wherever you are and come here, your era should have ended a long time ago and I am here to end you, but don't worry, you will end your life at the hands of the man who will conquer all the seas of this world. Luffy shouted. He would have no mercy on Shiki, the man is planning to send all these islands to the East Blue and destroy them with the impact and monsters, all because he had not forgotten his old boyfriend, Gold Roger. Shiki blew the roof of his house and took off into the air. Who are you? How do you know I'm here? Shiki growled at the man with large wings waiting for him to approach. My name is Monkey D. Luffy, today I am a hunter and you are my prey. Luffy spoke in a threatening tone. I am your prey? You're just a brat who came here to die. Shiki commented and looked at Luffy more closely. Monkey D. Isn't that the same surname as Garp? He asked. Yes, Garp is my grandfather. Luffy shrugged. That's good, after all, I can tell Garp that I killed his grandson, I can't wait to see his face when he finds out, Shiki exclaimed, laughing. You should at least consider if you could do it and not boast, but I understand, you haven't received newspapers for months, otherwise you would know that you will die here, at the hands of a man from the East Blue. Luffy provoked with a smile. Shiki stopped laughing and looked at Luffy raising an eyebrow. These young people today don't even know Shiki, the Golden Lion, the one who terrorized the sea one day. He exclaimed. Yes, one day. But now he is just a relic, a shadow of his past. Luffy continued to retort. TSK, it looks like I'll have to finish you quickly. Shiki commented and launched an attack on Luffy. He moved two giant stones standing near him and launched them towards the pirate in the air. Luffy didn't move seeing the huge rocks coming towards him. He would fight differently against Shiki at that moment. Using his Moa Moa no Mi, he made his body start to grow 7 times. What? The growth fruit? Then why does he have wings? Or is it a special Zoan? Shiki murmured, looking at a 15-meter-tall Luffy. The rocks approached, and Luffy punched them with his bare hands, exploding them into boulders. As it wasn't just his size that grew, his strength increased as well. "Let's start, Shiki. I hope you show some of your power," Luffy commented, knowing he could beat Shiki, but wanting a more interesting fight. Luffy flew towards Shiki before he could respond and punched him with a hockey-infused fist, causing Shiki to go into a defensive position, but the impact was too great as he was launched backward, flying to the ground of the island from which he had emerged. Boom! Asterisk. His body exploded against the ground, raising a large amount of dust. "Boss Shiki!" A group of men rushed to the site, shouting worriedly for their captain. "Who is this invader? Shoot the giant!" One of the men yelled before pointing a gun towards Luffy and starting to shoot. Luffy just stood still. Some bullets passed close to him, but the distance was so great that he doubted it would hurt even an animal there. "Stop shooting!" A voice emerged from the crater, and Shiki climbed out of the hole a bit injured. He glared at Luffy while blood dripped from his forehead. "You have enraged me, boy. I admit you are strong and know hockey, but I want to see you survive this," Shiki announced, and the islands around began to move, making a sound echoing through the region as if there was an earthquake. "What is this?" Beeple watched from afar with a mix of admiration and terror as the floating islands began to move. He was on a small cloud, using his Jeppo ability to stay elevated and safe as his captain had asked. Even from afar, the view was impressive and frightening. The islands, which before seemed serene and immobile, now spun and moved on top of each other. "The captain is really going to fight someone capable of doing this," he murmured to himself, his tone showing doubt and fear. Suddenly, the giant islands began to move even faster, and purple lights began to obscure the sunlight as they exploded against the ground at that distance. Beeple now saw his captain fighting a type of battle he had never witnessed before. He watched, the shockwaves spreading through the sky, distorting the light around and sending clouds racing. Many of the islands, now fragmented by Luffy's power, looked like runaway comets, creating trails of dust and debris in the air. It was an aerial battlefield, where gravity seemed to have been forgotten. "Captain, please, be okay," Beeple exclaimed, hoping Luffy would be fine. He would enter the fight, but this was too much for him as he watched all the chaos, now a large dust cloud in the midst of it with purple explosions emerging in the middle. On the islands, Shiki's soldiers and animals seemed even more scared, because chaos had covered them at that moment. "Watch out!" Boom! Asterisk. A rock fell close to them after Luffy exploded the tip of an island with his flames. "Look!" The man shouted before a giant gorilla fell on top of him from another island. Both men and animals were in trouble as they fell from the islands or exploded in flames while Luffy fired upon them. "Ha ha 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 ha! She ha ha ha!" What was stranger was a giant sending flames and a man with swords in place of his legs laughing amidst all that chaos. "This is really fun," Luffy commented amidst the smoke cloud that his flames created after exploding many islands. "Indeed, it's been a while since I've had this much fun," Shiki exclaimed, always a lover of chaos. Seeing him fight with everything while the opponent seemed to be on par with him was refreshing, reminding him of his old times. Boom asterisk. 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 Luffy continued to explode everything that came near him. His flames were 7 times larger, due to his increased size, so he could really cause chaos with all those rocks coming towards him. Sensing Shiki with his observation haki, he fired a fireball at him, ignoring the approaching islands. "She ha ha ha! HM?" Shiki laughed, but felt danger coming from a light approaching in the midst of the dust clouds. He moved 2 huge rocks to protect himself quickly. Boom asterisk. The rocks exploded, but that didn't prevent Luffy's explosion from reaching Shiki. The impact hit him, throwing him far away. "Ah, that hurt," Shiki murmured after stabilizing in the air, feeling the heat of the flames that hit him. "Come on, Shiki. I'm right here," Luffy said, approaching, and Shiki looked at him, sending new rocks. "Don't underestimate this legend," Shiki shouted and sent various mountains towards Luffy, who quickly exploded them, sending debris in all directions. Luffy continued flying towards him, dodging by the side of another mountain that Shiki moved towards him, reaching it after circling and punching the man again, making him explode into the same mountain in the air. Boom asterisk. Shiki entered the mountain before it exploded again, showing the pirate even more injured. Damn, you're good, kid, better than I imagined, but I'm still Shiki, the Golden Lion. I used to kill arrogant brats like you every day in my time. He exclaimed, releasing his conqueror's haki, but much weakened than it once was. I understand your determination, Shiki. I may not like you and want to kill you, but I still respect you as an opponent and what you once were. Luffy commented as he deactivated his size, returning to 210 centimeters. Shiki looked at him with a bit of curiosity, despite being quite injured and wanting to kill this boy. You talk as if you could already kill me. He commented. Well, if you can't resist this, then you will die. I'm going to change my fighting style. It's time to test this sword with the Akuma no Mi I put in it. Luffy commented as he took his sword out of his pocket and made it grow back to its original size. Wait. That sword. How did you get it? Shiki could never mistake the hilt of that sword, he recognized it anywhere. Yes, this is Ace, the sword that your old boyfriend used. It's time for me to test it and reap your life. Luffy commented as he grabbed the hilt and drew it from its sheath. The legendary sword shone against the sunlight that still passed through all that destruction. Luffy gripped it, and suddenly, it began to emit thunder around it, according to the power of the Paramecio type Akuma no Mi that Luffy had placed in it. Chapter 202 Shiki 02. Third Person POV. Calm Belt, First Half of Grand Line. Luffy let the power of the devil fruit in Ace flow. Yellow thunders began to surround it with red color. It was a special fruit that Luffy found for 2 billion in the store and found it quite interesting to fuse it with the sword. His main reason for going to Jaya was to find Teach. Seeing Doflamingo and Jack was a bit surprising, but that didn't stop him from enjoying the situation. He looked at Shiki quite shocked, looking at the sword strangely. You have this sword. Do you think you are worthy to wield it, rookie? Shiki exclaimed angrily as he released a bit of weakened Conqueror's haki, due to his current condition. Stop crying over your boyfriend, let's continue the fight. You might even get the sword if you kill me. Luffy smiled as the thunders intensified around the metal. Then Luffy saw Shiki making his first move, heading towards him. He lifted his foot and attacked Luffy with his sword instead of the limb. Metal sound, asterisk. Luffy just lifted Ace. Let's see how I am as a swordsman these days. He murmured and counterattacked. Shiki did not fall behind. Even weakened, Shiki was fast. Luffy and Shiki began to repel each other in the sky. Large rocks and islands rushed at Luffy at that moment, but he began to cut the large stones and dodge the islands with his super speed. The battle was a show between two swordsmen, but at one point Luffy decided to use the power of the sword. An island was coming towards him and he moved away from Shiki to concentrate the power of the Paramecia in Ace. The sword began to emit a huge thunder coming from it and spreading to all sides. Luffy leaned the sword back and launched it forward, releasing its power. What is this? Shiki was scared for a moment, feeling quite a danger coming from it, and got out of the way. The explosion flew like a lightning bolt to the island. It was as fast as lightning. When it reached the island, a spectacle of destruction happened. With a flash covering the entire sky, a scarlet electrical explosion exploded from the island, which grew devastating all the land it touched, while the inhabitants and animals on that island tried to escape the attack, but it was too late. Asterisk. The explosion then covered the entire island, affecting everything around. Shiki was thrown through the sky while stabilizing himself. When he stopped, he looked at the immense clouds of dust with red lightning appearing around. What is this? The people around the island were shocked, trying to protect themselves from the gigantic explosion happening at that moment. They became even more alarmed when they saw just debris in the air of what would be a huge island until a while ago. He destroyed the entire island? Shiki could not be more shocked. His gaze returned to where Luffy should be, but he was no longer there, and feeling his presence, he was even more shocked that Luffy was next to him. It was a good fight, Shiki, but I am stronger than you. But thank you for giving me an opportunity to use this power on your islands instead of an island in the lower sea. It would be quite problematic. Luffy commented casually and advanced against Shiki. He tried to defend himself while Luffy continued moving his sword quickly. But Shiki began to retreat as Luffy was gaining the upper hand. Cut asterisk in a moment, Luffy hit Shiki from the shoulder to his waist with a diagonal cut. Ah! He screamed as the blood spread. Shiki looked at him with clenched eyes and teeth. Luffy said nothing and continued advancing. Shiki was even more weakened while using his swords in place of legs to try to defend himself, but Luffy hit him at one point in the heart. Exclamation point. Shiki looked at the sword embedded in his chest, feeling a lot of pain as he began to feel his life draining. Shahahaha. You really beat me, kid. He suddenly started laughing, looking at Luffy, but he didn't seem to resist anymore at that moment. Who would have thought that I, the Golden Lion, would die to an unknown in the middle of nowhere? A shame the world will not know of our fight. He lamented. As always, Shiki was eccentric and always imagined a grandiose death. I understand, and I respect you for that. You were a great pirate in your era. However, times change and a new generation emerges to cover the old. Luffy said in a somewhat melancholic tone. A new generation emerges. Shiki commented while coughing up blood. He looked at Luffy with a gleam in his eyes in his final moments. You said you planned to conquer all the seas? You want to be greater than Roger? He asked. I will surpass the Pirate King. No, I will destroy the world government and declare myself the Emperor of all seas, Luffy commented. He planned to be the Emperor of the Sea, as the supreme pirate, but he did not have the ambition to control the world as the government does. He just wants to free the countries and let them be independent, but let the world know that the sea belongs to him. Shahahaha. Shiki started laughing again. That's very good. I hope that as the man who defeated me, you achieve your goals, boy. My era is over. He gave a final statement while pushing the sword with his body to fall onto an island below. Don't worry, I'll achieve that goal. And I'll take your fruit too. The world will never forget the power of the Golden Lion while one of my crewmates has its power, Luffy commented while watching the pirate fall. He noticed a small smile on Shiki as he finally died after hearing this. Luffy sighed and took his attention from the falling pirate, looking towards a cloud in the distance. Beepo! Come here! His voice was amplified, and it didn't take long for a white ball with a purple jumpsuit and the symbol of the straw hats on his clothes to arrive close by while dodging all the floating debris. Captain! Are you okay? Beepo asked cautiously. He was a bit scared of his captain after seeing him destroying an entire island with that attack. Even Beepo at a distance had difficulty stabilizing. I'm fine. Take this and eat it. Luffy threw a devil fruit that he had just bought in the store for 6 billion. What is this, Captain? Beepo asked, looking at the fruit. Just eat it, we don't have much time, Luffy commanded again. I'm sorry. Beepo yelled and ate the entire fruit, afraid of the captain. What a horrible taste! He shouted while holding his throat with disgust. You just ate the Fuwa no Mi. You've received the power of Shiki, Luffy said with satisfaction. What? I have the power of the legendary Golden Lion. Beepo couldn't believe those words. Luffy was going to respond, but suddenly, a thunderous sound started from all sides. The islands were losing the effect of Shiki's power as soon as he died. What's happening? Indigo shouted alarmed on the main island. The islands are falling. Scarlet shouted alarmed, looking around. We're going to die. A soldier screamed, running in fear. Where is the captain? Do something. Another said. If the islands are falling, it means Shiki is dead. Shiki's doctor commented. That's impossible. Scarlet shouted. Did you see that explosion that wiped out an entire island? The person who killed Shiki is really powerful. Now we're going to die, the doctor commented, already accepting his fate. Meanwhile, on several islands, animals ran from one side to the other looking for shelter, but they were in a situation where nothing could be done. Captain! What should we do? Beepo shouted alarmed, looking at the islands starting their free fall. You need to use your power, Beepo. I will help you lift all the islands, Luffy commented, grabbing Beepo's jumpsuit while activating his speed 70 times, disappearing the next moment. He made his way to all the islands, making Beepo touch and all the pieces of land while the islands. What should I do, Captain? Beepo, even touching all the islands, was still lost. You have to try to use your power. You must have received something in your subconscious to use the ability. Try to do it, Luffy instructed, and Beepo closed his eyes concentrating. Suddenly, all the falling islands began to slow down until they stabilized. This. Shiki's doctor looked around, stunned as everything seemed stable again. He was sure that Shiki had died for the effect to stop. Wait. Does this mean Captain Shiki is still alive? Indigo shouted with joy. The captain is alive. The men celebrated after those words. Shiki is dead. A voice emerged behind the men at that moment, and they saw Luffy next to Beepo. Everyone immediately pointed their weapons at them, and Luffy used his conqueror's haki to bring everyone to their knees. I'll give you a chance. Luffy lifted the dead body of Shiki and threw it in front of all of them. You join my fleet, or you will be thrown off this island. Luffy smiled like a demon. Even Beepo beside him was frightened. What? The captain died. Indigo said, crying while looking at the body of his captain. It seems I was right. The doctor commented. What will we do? The men murmured while they were on their knees, unable to muster the will to stand. Anyway, I'll give you 1 day to think about it. Luffy said, crossing his arms, and looked at the scientist who conducted experiments for Shiki, where he had modified all the animals on the islands. You're the doctor who created these animals, right? Luffy asked. Yes. The man spoke submissively, still under the effect of Luffy's conqueror's haki. Well, I want to see your research. I'm quite interested in it. Luffy commented. He could use these animals to train his crew. They would be perfect for it, and he could talk to Chopper, a drug specialist, to have him further refine these animals. They would be good for training and even for his future army. Luffy turned his attention to Beepo. Take the islands to Skypiea. I'm going to make a call before I start looking into the research. Luffy commented, following the doctor inside the facilities after Luffy released him from his pressure. Meanwhile, he was calling Hancock to schedule their meeting to see what that woman wanted so much to meet him for, hoping she was missing them, and they would have to solve it with many hours of sex. Catcha, asterisk. Hello? Luffy spoke. Luffy! Hancock exclaimed like a love-struck girl, before her voice changed to someone more serious. It's you! She said now as if he were just anyone, and Luffy just scratched his head trying to understand why she was acting like this. Well, you wanted to meet with me, I'm still in the calm belt. He said. Yes. Let's meet. She returned to her excited tone. Luffy and she scheduled a place while Beepo steered the islands to that position. Hancock's mood changed, sometimes seeming like a love-struck girl, other times like someone arrogant. Luffy didn't know how to deal with her or her real intentions for the meeting, but hung up the Den Den Mushi to meet her soon. He accepted. I can't wait to tell him we'll have children. We're going to get married. Hancock screamed in her cabin while her sisters still looked at her, lost. She had been destroying the room since Luffy talked to her days ago because she was in front of the Den Den Mushi this whole time waiting for his call. However, they still looked at her strangely because their sister seemed like two people at the same time. She switched personalities all the time while talking with Luffy, while the pirate went to see Shiki's research in the doctor, unaware that he would receive the biggest shock of his life in the coming days. Chapter 203. First Wife 01. Third Person POV. Calm Belt, first half of Grand Line. Beepo led all the islands in the direction his captain had instructed, to make a brief stop before continuing. Luffy was in the scientist's laboratory while this was happening, since he was quite interested in the research on how they transformed the animals from these islands that Shiki had captured into powerful beasts. It seemed that all those who wanted to avenge Shiki were contained, and the next day they ended up joining Luffy's fleet since they didn't have much choice. But Luffy smiled satisfied. There were at least 1,000 men that Shiki had secretly recruited, and this would make a good army if they were properly trained. Finally, the islands arrived at the agreed location, and Luffy left the island and descended to the sea, where the Kuja pirate's ship was stationed. Approaching, he saw the people waiting for his arrival. Hancock looked at him with sparkles in her eyes while standing next to her sisters. Luffy landed softly. Despite some pirates questioning why he was there, they did not raise the issue seeing Hancock waiting for him. "Hello?" Luffy commented after landing. "Luffy!" she exclaimed, before coughing and trying to appear tougher, placing her hand on her waist. Her voice shifted from excited to a more forced tone as if she was trying to talk normally, but at the same time, it was noticeable that she was forcing it. "I'm glad you've arrived, Monkey D. Luffy, we need to talk," she said as her sister sighed, accustomed to Hancock's volatile behavior over the last few days. "Yes, I'm here for that." Luffy spoke, a bit lost, not knowing why Hancock was acting like this. If she liked him as he imagined, there was no reason to act so tough and in such a forced manner. "Come with me," she said in a final tone, to follow her to the cabin. "Sister, are you going to talk to him alone?" Marigold asked. "Yes, this is a matter that only concerns me and him." Hancock spoke, and Luffy scratched his head even more at what seemed to be a mystery beyond the possible alliance made between them. Luffy followed Hancock, and in the room, a small table with chairs, where Hancock was going to sit. However, what caught Luffy's attention were the posters of him hanging on the wall of the Empress's room and even some sheets with stick figure drawings of a couple and two children looking happy. "Hey, what's going on here?" Luffy was a bit scared, to be honest. "Sit down." Hancock spoke with the same forced voice, and Luffy calmly sat in front of her. "I'll be honest, we are interested in our alliance, but there's a condition." Hancock spoke. "I'm listening, Hancock." Luffy spoke, and this seemed like an arrow through Hancock's heart. "He called me by my name," she said internally while striking a pose, feeling her heart being hit. "She is one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen, but this is definitely strange and hard to get used to." Luffy murmured, observing Hancock's reaction. "Well, like any alliance, there is only one way to conclude the pact." Hancock spoke, looking at Luffy with bright eyes. "Which is a marriage." She again had the passionate voice she always had. "Well, that's expected since we spent days on that island. I always intended to marry you, Hancock." Luffy spoke with a smile to the woman this time. He intended to make her his wife, so he was not surprised. "You accepted?" she asked, almost shocked, not believing what she heard. "Yes." "Let's get married." Luffy shrugged. "Happiness!" Hancock shouted as she jumped across the table to sit in Luffy's lap. Luffy did not reject Hancock, letting her attack him, after a while with her seeming quite happy, and he looked at her grabbing his hand and placing it on her stomach. "This is good, because we're going to have children," she simply said with a bright smile. Luffy stopped looking at her at that moment. He was still processing what this woman was talking about. Instinctively he felt his hand on her stomach and sensed something in her womb with Haki. It was true, there were presences forming. "I'm going to be a father." Luffy seemed quite shocked by this, as it was the most surprising news he had ever received in this world. "Yes, we're going to have 2 children," Hancock said excitedly. "What are we waiting for then? Let's get married right here, immediately." "How are you taking care of the children?" Luffy spoke quickly, not wanting to waste time. "Well, we can do it on Amazon Lily if you want, but we don't need a best man or anything like that." Hancock, although happy and excited, reasoned. "Best man? I have Beepo, let's do this now." Luffy didn't want to waste time. Since he was going to be a father, it was his responsibility not to leave the children without his name. "Yes." Hancock also didn't want to waste time. They continued discussing, but now they were more like a couple excited about the news. They talked about how this would be planned and ended up choosing Amazon Lily itself for the celebration. Beepo appeared after Luffy called him with a den mushi, and he came quite curious about what his captain wanted. Then Hancock stepped out of the cabin and announced that she would marry Luffy, saying it was an alliance, which shocked everyone. Even Beepo was taken by surprise. The polar bear touched the ship's side and began to levitate it towards Amazon Lily with the floating islands. Meanwhile, Luffy had already started his honeymoon in advance, isolating the room's sound and spending his days without eating, drinking, just taking baths with his future wife and mother of his 2 daughters. "They've been in that room for days," Sandersonia commented, looking at the room. "There's nothing we can do about it. Our sister is going to get married, I still can't believe that up until a few weeks ago, she hated men, now she's in love and pregnant with one. Marigold commented beside her. At least she seems happy, and if he keeps his word, we'll be rid of these marks. Sander Sonia said with some hope. The other crew members were processing everything they were hearing about the marriage. Not even the fact that the ship was flying with the snakes was more surprising than Hancock's marriage. Soon they arrived at Amazon. Lily and Luffy and Hancock finally came out of the room, full of dark circles under their eyes and asking for food, a lot of it to replenish their energies. On an island thousands of kilometers away, even in the calm belt, an old man was hitting a girl. "It hurts, Grandpa," Lucy shouted as she felt a callus forming on her forehead. "Come on, Lucy. This is the fist of love. You're not strong enough yet. How do you plan to face your brother? Haven't you seen the news from the past few weeks?" Garp shouted at Lucy. "I know, I'll catch him," Lucy said with determination. "It's still not enough," Garp shouted, punching Lucy, who used hockey to defend against her grandfather's attack but was thrown back, bouncing like a rubber ball. "I can't take it anymore," Lucy commented defeated. She had lost count of how many times she had been hit today. "Rest, we'll continue in a few hours," Garp commented and began to walk squarely back to the camp he had set up to train his granddaughter. He had brought her to this island weeks ago to teach her the 6 styles in hockey, to turn her into a powerful Marine. She learned the basics of hockey really fast, although there was still a long way to go before saying she was adequate. Garp also brought his other students and they were passed out somewhere on the island, bleeding on the ground, since his training was very rigorous. On the beach of the island, the iconic ship of the Vice Admiral was stationed with his team, and a specific Den Den Mushi rang at that moment, causing a Commodore to enter the room and pick it up before answering it right there. After being shocked by what happened, he quickly left the ship and went to the island using Jeppo. "Vice Admiral Garp." He greeted his superior quickly. "HM? What is it?" Garp asked, seeing the Den Den Mushi in his hand. "It's better if you see for yourself," the man said, passing the phone to Garp. "Hello?" Garp asked. "Grandpa." The voice on the other side was quite excited. "Luffy. You damned brat, are you up to trouble again?" Garp shouted immediately, seeing his delinquent grandson again. "Did you see my bounty? Tell Sengoku that 1 billion would be very welcome." Luffy laughed and commented on the phone. "Luffy, you damned outlaw, you shouldn't be happy being a pirate worth 750 million, Garp yelled again. "Ha ha 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 ha. How are you?" Luffy asked, changing the subject. "You're asking how your grandfather is? Wahaha. My little grandson is worried about me." Garp shouted, laughing heartily, leaving the Commodore beside him confused, as he had been speaking in anger just a moment ago. How had one question changed the Vice Admiral's mood? "But I'm fine. I'm training your sister to capture you." He changed his voice to be more stern. "That's good, I miss you guys, I hope we can meet soon. I want to kick your butt again, Grandpa," Luffy said, laughing. Wahahaha. Garp laughed with a blush when Luffy said he missed them, but his voice became severe again with a sharp look. "You think you're ready to kick this old man's butt? Wait, because soon I'll judge you with justice," Garp said. "Anyway, why did you call and seem so happy? Did something happen?" Garp asked, more calmly, while wiping his nose. "Yes, Grandpa, you're going to be a great-grandfather." "I'm going to be a father," Luffy announced with the same cheerful tone. "Wait. What?" Garp seemed shocked. "I told you, I'm going to be the father of 2 girls." Luffy was very excited. "Luffy, you better be joking, even though that's not a good joke," Garp growled. "It's true, Grandpa, I'm going to be a father." "I'm serious," Luffy insisted. "You damn. How dare you have my great-granddaughters when you've become an outlaw? I swear I'm going to teach you a lesson," Garp yelled at Luffy at that moment. "Anyway, I have to marry their mother here urgently, so I just called to let you know that the Monkey D family is going to increase soon," Luffy said and hung up the phone at that moment. "That Luffy." Garp seemed furious. Vice Admiral. The Commodore was quite lost listening to all this. He didn't even invite me to the wedding. I should be the godfather of my great-granddaughters. Garp started to cry with rage and swore he would beat Luffy so much with his fists of love the next time they met. Chapter 204, First Wife 02. Third Person POV. Amazon Lily, first half of Grand Line. The floating islands finally stabilized above Amazon Lily. Captain, do I have to be part of this? I heard the women of Amazon Lily kill any man who approaches the island. Will we be okay, Captain? Beto asked, quite worried as he steered the ship down with the snakes. Don't worry, your captain is going to marry the queen of the Amazons, won't I also be the king of this place? Luffy joked. All right. Beepo murmured. Just don't get us killed, Captain. Luffy looked strangely at Beepo, still scared, wondering if his companion is aware that he now has the power to destroy any island in this world, but that would be a matter for another time. Then the ship left the sky and finally returned to the sea as it headed towards the kingdom's gate. Luffy! We're arriving! Hancock exclaimed beside him, her demeanor no longer forced, leaving room only for a girl hopelessly in love. That's true, but we have to resolve this quicker than I wish, since I still need to do some things. Luffy smiled at her, making her nod, as Luffy had explained the situation to the Pirate Empress. As soon as the ship entered, a crowd of women awaited the return of their Empress, even though they didn't know why she had suddenly left. Captain, we're going to be killed. Beepo shouted beside him, scared as he cowered. Why do hairy men seem to be so fearful? An Amazon from the deck asked, looking at Beepo acting as he was. Beepo continued trembling. Luffy looked at him and just shook his head, thinking his companion was exaggerating. As soon as the ship arrived at the island's port, Luffy and Hancock stepped out through the bow into the midst of the crowd of Amazons, some of whom pointed at Luffy asking who she was, since Luffy was not wearing clothes and they wondered why he had such hard and small chest in a strange shape. Who is that? Do you know her? Why does she dress so strangely? That hat she wears is so funny. She looks so poorly dressed. The exclamations started while the island's inhabitants didn't know it was Luffy and the Kuja pirates seemed unwilling to speak of him. Luffy looked at Hancock and smiled. Your people are quite funny. Don't pay much attention to them, they never see men, so they don't know how to differentiate one. Hancock commented in a sweet tone as she led Luffy to the castle. Look at that bear? An Amazon from the city pointed at Beepo. What happened to her? Why is she full of white fur? It must be a disease. That's not a woman, it's a bear, clarified the last one. Come on, Mr. Bear, no one will attack you, I promise. Marigold commented while trying to calm the fearful bear, hoping to be attacked by arrows. As soon as they arrived at the palace, Luffy and Hancock went in to organize their wedding. It didn't take long for an elderly woman to appear in front of the pirate. So you are Monkey D, Luffy. Interesting, since you've had the eyes of the world on you since you came to the sea. She commented, analyzing as she circled him. And you must be Gloriosa, the former empress of this kingdom. Luffy commented calmly. You're not wrong, let's see, good muscles, your skin color is stable, seems healthy, my verdict is the children will be born very well. She announced after inspecting Luffy thoroughly. Really? Hancock shouted beside him, excited. Luffy looked unsure what to say, as this was even too much for him. Anyway, let's get organized. Luffy asked to focus. Yes, you're right. Hancock spoke and turned her attention to the sisters. Gather the entire kingdom tomorrow morning, we will announce the news. For now place Luffy's crewmate in his room and I will speak with my future husband tonight alone. She announced brightly. Her sisters just sighed, knowing what kind of talk they would have, even with Luffy muffling the moans. The night passed and Luffy and Hancock spent another sleepless night. The next day after breakfast, Hancock appeared on the balcony. Hancock-sama. The women screamed excitedly seeing Hancock and looked at her lovingly as a common occurrence. Listen, people of Amazon Lily. Hancock started as her people calmed down. I am here today to announce something important. She had a serious face when she closed her eyes, and when she opened them, she was a woman lost in love. "I've come to announce that I'm getting married," she shouted excitedly. All the Amazons fell silent at that moment, trying to process everything they had heard. "Did I hear right?" said a tall woman. "Hancock-sama said she would marry?" A chubby one asked beside her. "She said marry, like, with a real man?" A blonde asked. "Hancock-sama, you're going to marry a man?" Someone asked loudly, quite shocked. Hancock looked at them and nodded excitedly. "Yes, this empress has finally found her happiness. So, I will start my family," she said. Hancock-sama seemed so happy. Someone commented. "She is so beautiful saying that. I'm in love." Another person commented. "If she's happy, we should be too, right?" Another Amazon. "Even though I've never seen a man, if Hancock-sama is happy with it, then I support her." Another Amazon commented joyfully. "Yes, Hancock-sama is going to marry." Another shouted. Soon the crowd began to cheer the announcement, and everyone shouted in support. Hancock looked satisfied at the crowd. "Thank you for cheering for this empress's happiness," she shouted. After that, Luffy sighed as the country entered a festive mood. Nobody knew it was Luffy the man who would marry the empress, since they just thought he was a girl with hard and strange chest while displaying them to everyone. Bippo, calmer after seeing that nobody attacked him, managed to sigh while getting ready for the wedding. Since Luffy forced him to be the best man, it would be either Bippo or a chimpanzee that worked with Shiki at the time. So, a large stage was set up in Amazon Lily. Luffy wore a tuxedo and came out to the country with many women realizing he was the man. "You are a man," the women accused Luffy. "You're going to marry our empress. You better take good care of her, otherwise." A woman showed a knife, and Luffy just shrugged. He went to the place and Gloriosa would perform the ceremony. "Didn't you dress up?" Luffy raised the question to the woman. "Do I need to?" "Spare me, young man," she said mockingly and continued. "Anyway, your future wife is coming." She pointed behind. Luffy saw Hancock wearing a long white wedding dress, being led by her two sisters to the stage. Luffy waited for her to approach, coming with a shy look, looking at Luffy as if he was a dream, like any woman in love. Gloriosa waited for Hancock to approach and stand beside Luffy as she started the ceremony. Gloriosa, with her clear voice, began the ceremony. "We are gathered here today to celebrate the union of two souls. A union that started with a possible alliance and now they are about to have their lives intertwined with one another." She then turned to Luffy. "Monkey D. Luffy, do you take Boa Hancock to be your life partner, to protect her as you navigate the stormy seas and explore unknown horizons together?" Luffy, with an iconic smile, replied without hesitation, "Yes, I do." Turning to Hancock, Gloriosa asked, "Boa Hancock, do you take Monkey D. Luffy to be your life partner, to stand by his side through the adventures that await and face the challenges of the seas together?" Hancock, with tears of happiness in her eyes, replied softly, "Yes, I do." "Then, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. May your journey together be long and full of adventures. You may seal this union with a kiss." Luffy and Hancock moved closer, and the kiss they shared was a testament to the pact they had just formed. The crowd of Amazons exploded in applause and cheers, celebrating the happiness of their empress and the union before them. The celebration began in the kingdom with a grand party. The women discovered Bippo was a man and asked if all men were like him. Ignoring the existence of Luffy, the polar bear even became quite embarrassed with the attention he received. Luffy and Hancock sat at the main table as the official couple while Hancock fed him by her initiative, saying she was training to be a good wife. Luffy couldn't complain much. Despite not liking to be pampered or treated like a child, he let it happen on this day. After a while, Luffy took his first wife in this world and flew her to the castle through the sky. He spent the rest of the night without sleep again. "Captain, so I should go without you?" Bippo asked cautiously. "Yes, you just have to follow the Vivre card to Skypiea and lead the islands to that side," Luffy commented on the side. He left the room after taking a shower the next day and went to find his companion, asking him to return to Skypiea without him for the time being. "But what if those men from Shiki attack me?" Beepo was scared. Listen, Beepo, you can beat them all. You have a power that the world government fears. You can send meteors the size of islands to any place in the world. Luffy tried to put some reasoning into the bear's head. I can? Beepo asked, surprised. Yes, you can. But... Stop being pessimistic, take this. Luffy had to resort to his last card. He took out an item from the store, a very special item, as it was an afro that he used in Whiskey Peak to fight against Baroque works. This? Beepo froze when Luffy placed the afro on his head. Tell me, Beepo, does the undefeated Beepo fear anything? Luffy asked, crossing his arms. Beepo, who had a shocked look, quickly turned it into a determined one. Of course not, Captain. He said. That's very good. Now go to the sky and lead the islands to Skypiea. You must show who's boss if anyone dares to challenge the undefeated Beepo. Luffy commented, making Beepo's eyes shine. Yes, Captain. He said and flew out the window to the sky. What a strange change of personality. Luffy commented, and Gloriosa, seeing this from a distance, could not help but comment, you really know how to handle your crew, from what I see, she murmured. It's true, however, now I must deal with my wife, Luffy commented and left the place, returning to Hancock's room, as their honeymoon was just beginning. 5 days passed while Luffy and Hancock did not leave the room. The Snake Sisters always asked if they needed to eat, but the only responses were moans, making them run away in shame. One day Luffy finally left the room with Hancock. What kind of animals are you? Gloriosa shouted, seeing their leaner state. Ha 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 ha. Give me food, and lots of it. Luffy laughed and requested. After spending 2 hours returning to his normal state, Luffy had to leave the island. As we agreed, my wife. You must take care of these children for now. I will return after training with my crew and stay alert for big events happening. The seas will change soon. Luffy commented, holding the woman's face. After all, he had to take care of her for the rest of his life. I know, I understood what you said, but it's still so hard to see you going away, she commented sadly. I know, but we'll meet in the next 2 months, so wait for me a little longer, okay? Luffy spoke softly. All right. Hancock had to accept in the end. Goodbye everyone, we'll meet again soon. Luffy announced and flew to the sky. As soon as he was above the island, instead of heading to Skypiea, he flew at his maximum speed to the South Blue. After all, there was a person there he had made a promise to many years ago. He had to see if that person still wanted to keep it. Chapter 205, Yuta-01. Third-person POV. Calm Belt, first half of Grand Line. Attention, I am doing Luffy going to Elegia, but there is nothing that proves his actual location, so I will say it is in the South Blue, close to the Red Wall in the center of the world. After becoming a married man, Luffy wasted no time and flew towards the South Blue. There was someone specific he needed to meet before rejoining his crew. He sliced through the sky, maneuvering among the clouds with agility at a speed increased by 70 times. Enemies following the Vivre cards of Doflamingo and Pajon found themselves forced to change course repeatedly, trying to guess where Luffy was heading to confuse their pursuers, not that he thought anyone too powerful for him to handle would come after him at this time. He still kept them in his pocket, to negotiate their freedom in the future, earning some money from the world government. His journey continued over the vast sea, passing through various islands after crossing the Calm Belt and finally entering the Southern Sea, where the climate was much calmer than the Grand Line. He followed the Eternal Pose to Elegia and headed in that direction for the next few days without rest as he approached the place, finally seeing it one day as a small point on the horizon. This country is known worldwide as the capital of music, but something terrible happened a few years ago, announced as Shanks, the redhead, being the main cause of this disaster when he visited the island. Time passed, and in Elegia, after the island had gone through this disaster, it had risen again. The city of music had started to sing joyfully again after more than a decade in construction. The city was bustling with commerce again. Besides the basics like food, the trade in musical instruments was quite large here. Luffy arrived on the island and landed out of sight of everyone before entering the city. He put on a cloak to cover his face so as not to be identified. It wasn't his style to hide, but he just wanted to stroll around peacefully before finding the person he wanted here, since he would be easily recognized and could cause the entire kingdom to panic with a pirate of 750 million berries walking through the streets. Entering the crowd of people on the main street, he walked calmly. Shanks was here a long time ago. It's a link to the kingdom. Luffy had to admit as he looked around, there were giant, shining crystals while a huge stage was under construction. People were singing and playing instruments all over the place, turning this place into a true country of music. Come see, come hear. Guitars with strings that capture the essence of the wind, flutes that whisper the stories of the seas. Each note a journey, each melody an adventure. A seller announced as Luffy passed by. Another exclaimed nearby, selling local food. Sweet melodies for your ears and sweet flavors for your soul. Try the melody cake, a recipe passed down for generations, as sweet as the songs of Elegia. With a guitar in hand and a voice echoing through the streets, an artist sang, "Oh, Elegia, land of music and magic, your beauty reborn, stronger with each day." The crowd around stopped to listen, some shiny coins being thrown in his direction in appreciation. A man tried to approach Luffy at that moment, showing off a green crystal. Elegia crystals, straight from our mines. Not just beautiful, but capable of amplifying the beauty of your music. A touch of magic for every musician's home. But Luffy just ignored him and kept walking. As Luffy wandered and looked at everything this country had to offer, he felt a presence approaching him directly. Suddenly, a peculiar melody cut through the air, distinct from the other songs filling the streets. It was an incredibly beautiful voice, so captivating that for a brief moment, Luffy found himself caught up in the music, his feet moving almost against his will. Luffy realized someone was trying to control him with this music, which, besides being beautiful, had a power behind the melody trying to enchant him. He stopped abruptly, his quick reaction surprising the source of the melody. The person behind him did not expect their attempt at enchantment to fail, nor did they expect Luffy to be able to discern the hidden intention in the music. Luffy spun on his heels with astonishing speed, ready to confront the source of this mysterious music. He reached out to grab the person's arm and discover their intentions. But then, the female voice of the person soared, the melody intensifying in an effort to disorient him. It had some effect on Luffy, as the person managed to slip from his grasp and run scared to the other side while running through the streets. "Can she affect me a bit?" Luffy commented, a bit surprised to see that the person had escaped and was running at that moment. Luffy looked at the person from under his cloak, who also had their own cloak hiding their face, while they continued to run looking scared. He began to question who it could be, and only one person came to his mind at that moment. Could it be? He murmured, looking at the person, and decided to take action. "Wait!" He shouted as the person ran through the crowd with many looking at them in surprise. He ran after the person and would quickly catch up, but she released her melody, making him fall behind or causing people to get in his way. He could deal with that, but he didn't want to scare her if it was who he thought it might be. So, he decided on another approach. The fleeing person looked back while running and singing. She saw that the cloaked stranger was no longer following her, which relieved her greatly, but she continued to run and sing so that the people around her would help her without realizing it. She darted through the streets and entered an alley in the city, emerging into a garden and entering a forest. After running another 2 kilometers, she finally found a kind of cave with a lake, laughed, and crystals, where she used this place to calm down. "What was that?" the person murmured with a bit of fear. "He wasn't enchanted and almost caught me. I'll have to deal with him in another way. I can't let a pirate wander freely on this island." She continued talking to herself. She lifted her cloak, and her 2 colored hair fell out. This girl was a resident of this country since there had been a disaster, a possessor of the Yuta Yuta no Mi. She has abilities that not only enhance her singing and convey her feelings through her voice but can confuse senses, create illusions, and even create an illusory world. She ended up falling in love with this country after being abandoned by her father. And always defended this place, as always, trying to get rid of pirates that enter the kingdom. She can sense their auras, although not seeing the real extent of them. She can see how a person may have done bad things, and Luffy was no different. He did what he wanted, and he ended up threatening, stealing, and killing as he progressed on his journey, as he always said he was not a good person. When Luffy entered the city, Yuta, who was strolling hidden, saw his aura and wanted to rid of that person she noticed was a pirate hidden in a cloak. Approaching him, she began to sing, to lead him into a corner and get rid of him, but it seems this one was quite different from the previous ones. He not only resisted her singing with some difficulty but also pursued her, making the girl have to flee and use her powers to aid her escape. She had no idea that there was someone above her at that moment, watching her closely. Meanwhile, the same girl sat down after breathing a sigh of relief in front of a small lake, hoping she wouldn't encounter that person again, and started to sing a small melody to ease her racing heart. She sang something that reminded her of a brief time she lived in the East Blue, where she had met two brothers, one of whom had made a promise with a childhood passion. Her melody turned sad, and all the plants seemed to shrink around her with it. She liked to think of that time as something happy, but it soon became something sad, as she had lost everything shortly after and would never return to that place or see those people again, her father, and Luffy. Why do I still sing this song when it brings me so many thoughts of everything I've lost? I miss it so much. She murmured, stopping her singing as she wiped her tears and looked at her reflection in the water. I still remember this song when you liked to sing it for me and my sister. I miss that time a lot too. Yuta. A voice emerged behind the girl, and she turned around alarmed, seeing that it was the person who was wearing the same cloak that chased her, but his face was no longer covered. No, you. Surprise and disbelief took over her expression. Before her stood Luffy, no longer the boy from her memories, but the man she had seen in the newspapers in recent months. It's been a long time since I've seen you, Yuta. Luffy commented, looking at the woman he hadn't seen in more than 10 years, a girl he had always loved since he was a child, and became furious when Shanks told him she had died, where the whole incident with the Yonko losing his arm happened. Is it really you? She murmured with a broken heart, letting more tears stream down her eyes. Yes, Shanks told me you died more than 10 years ago, but I'm glad that never happened. Luffy opened a small melancholic smile seeing his old friend. Chapter 206, Yuta 02. Third-person POV. Allegia, South Blue. Luffy. Yuta seemed to move on her own and didn't know when she had started running towards Luffy at that moment. Luffy let the emotional girl hug him as she jumped on him with quite a bit of force, hugging him back while his arms went around her back. Luffy! She cried out while squeezing his neck. Yuta! Luffy calmly commented. I'm so happy to see you after all these years. Are you really real? Yuta continued to exclaim, and Luffy thought about how she had been in a complicated situation over the last few years, and he didn't need to be an expert in observation hockey to see the darkness that surrounded her from blaming herself all this time. Me too, Yuta. I'm really happy to see you again, after all this time. Luffy cracked a small smile. They stayed embraced for a while, feeling each other's body heat. It was only after 10 minutes that Luffy picked her up by the waist and moved her back a bit while they looked into each other's eyes the whole time. Let's sit down, you have a beautiful place here, why not enjoy it a bit? Luffy invited, and Yuta followed him to sit in front of the place. I still can't believe it's you, but you are real, that's what matters. She said, sitting down next to him and leaning her shoulder against the old friend as if he would escape at any moment. Yes, I found this island after a few days of traveling. Luffy wasn't bothered at all by Yuta invading his space. But how did you find me? How did you know you would find me here? No one has ever shown up. She said with a sad tone. Look, Yuta. I couldn't have come here before, and Shanks never talked about it. I only found out a few months ago, so I came here as soon as I could. I didn't want to leave you here alone anymore. He commented in a tone he usually didn't use. Luffy really cared for Yuta and didn't want her to stay here. You don't want to leave me here alone? She asked. Yes, I want to take you with me. Luffy got straight to the point. What? No, you can't just come here and say something like that. Yuta looked at him surprised. Yuta, let's talk about this later, okay? I just want to see how an old friend is doing. Luffy wanted to first talk with her before discussing his plans. Yuta sighed and nodded. All right, tell me how your life has been. How is Lucy? I saw in the newspaper that she was a Marine. Yuta asked curiously. Luffy began to tell her about his life, how Shanks had given him the hat, and his subsequent years with Curly Dayton. What? You were raised by mountain bandits? Yuta laughed at that. Yes, you should have seen, we suffered when Lucy ate all the food, and we tried to make her spit it all out again. Luffy smiled. So, you ended up having other brothers? She commented, placing her hands on her chin while looking at the lake. Yes, Ace and Sabo, they're still around. I met Ace recently and beat him up. I will meet Sabo soon. Luffy commented. You're always so violent. She commented, displeased. Didn't you see my bounty? I'm a pirate worth 750 million. Luffy laughed proudly. You really became a pirate. It's no wonder I saw your aura when I found you in town. Yuta still sounded dissatisfied. That's how I am, Yuta. You knew that before even wanting to make a promise with me, remember? I shouted that I would dominate all the seas of this world. Luffy mentioned with a smile. Mentioning that made Yuta quite embarrassed as a blush appeared on her face. You remember the promise. She murmured but then lowered her head. I doubt we can fulfill it. You already have a woman, that Yamato from the newspaper. Her voice broke at the end, like a broken heart. Luffy remained silent. Until he sighed and took the girl's hand. How about we have a date today? This island seems quite interesting. No past, no commitments, just you and me. He asked. A date? She seemed surprised by that. Yes, however, I will have to wear a mask. I don't want to be recognized as an evil pirate here. It wouldn't be nice. Luffy commented. Phew. Ha 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 ha. You're right, people would start running. Yuta began to laugh, imagining the scene. So, that's a yes. Luffy commented, leaving the girl flustered. You've become much bolder than I remember. You were much more shy and innocent. Where did that boy I met go, huh? She finally said and continued. Alright, a date tonight. Even in conflict, she ended up accepting to go out with her old childhood crush. Luffy smiled at Yuta's response. He helped her up, and together, they started walking towards her house as she led the way. Yuta was entrusted to the protection under the king of the music realm, but she lived in a separate house by her own choice, being a house on a small hill. Both Luffy and Yuta put on cloaks again and began to walk through the city, while Yuta took the initiative to grab Luffy's hand and lead him to her house. Arriving at Yuta's house after leaving the city, they entered the place, and Luffy almost laughed at so many feminine things and musical instruments. Luffy looked around with interest. You've made a beautiful home here, Yuta. It has a very personal touch. Thank you, I wanted to make a place to call my own. Yuta said. Hey, Yuta, do you still play that violin? I remember you practicing on the ship's deck. Luffy asked, looking at the small and quite old object in a corner. He still remembered the girl playing a similar one during his time with Shanks. Oh, yes, I still play. Actually, I've been composing some music. Maybe I can play for you later. Yuta replied, a shy smile forming on her lips. Hey, is this me and Lucy? Luffy pointed to a paper on the wall where there were stick figures of children. I don't know what you're talking about. Yuta quickly ran and removed the paper from the wall before Luffy could see more. Ha 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 ha. No need to be so embarrassed. Luffy smiled at her. I'll get ready, wait for me, you can take a shower after me. She mentioned, grabbing a towel and heading for the shower. She came out a while later and went to her room wrapped in a towel with a blush on her face. Luffy entered the bathroom the next moment, taking a shower and buying some clothes from the store to wear. While Yuta was still in her room, Luffy stayed in the living room, waiting for the girl to get ready. She came out soon after and was surprised by Luffy as soon as she saw him. Luffy, despite his usually carefree nature, had his own style and surprised the girl by choosing an elegant outfit for the date with Yuta. He wore a white t-shirt with a black jacket and dark pants with boots of the same color. Still wearing the hat, he put on a Japanese mask of a red demon, hiding his face. You chose a nice outfit, but that mask is scary. Yuta commented while crossing her arms around her breasts. Don't mind that, it's style. Besides, you look very beautiful. Luffy smiled at the girl. Yuta, for her part, chose a dress that hugged her curves. It had a baby blue fabric that made her look quite beautiful in it. Her hair, notable for its two distinct colors, was loose, falling over her shoulders in soft waves. Yuta's mask was of a peacock with feathers, quite elegant for the girl. "So you're quite famous here?" Luffy asked, approaching her. "Why do you think I hid in the crowd today?" she said, waiting for him to come closer. "I doubt you can hide just with a mask, but shall we go?" Luffy commented, waiting for her to take his hand. As soon as Yuta took his hand, he led her out of the house, heading towards the city for a night just between the two of them, forgetting their past and problems. They walked together through the island, drawing attention from people walking through the city night, recognizing the couple in masks with elegant clothes. "That hair color! It's Yuta-san," someone shouted in surprise. Yuta was much more famous than Luffy had imagined, as she was an idol here. "Who's that? He's such a tall man," someone exclaimed, since Luffy was 2.10 meters tall and Yuta only 170. "Yuta-san is dating," a young man cried. "It seems so. I would never have imagined this. Yuta-san has always been so reserved, but I still wonder who was the handsome guy behind the mask," a young woman murmured. "You're quite famous, aren't you?" Luffy commented. "I sing every weekend. The island gets a lot of tourists on that day, so I'm quite well known," she commented. "I see, you deserve your success then." Luffy smiled behind the mask. "My dream is to make my music reach everyone in this world. I'm sure I will achieve it, and I will create an ideal world where everyone will be happy," she exclaimed, and Luffy didn't say anything to that. Imagining the future she would encounter, today she is a bit different from herself 2 years in the future, but that would soon change if Luffy didn't take her away from this place. They finally arrived at an elegant place as requested by Yuta, who liked this place. Luffy ordered 2 tables at the highest spot facing the sea and they sat down to talk. "What can I bring for you?" the waiter asked, and Luffy ordered some wine. Luffy and Yuta continued to talk like old friends about all the subjects they hadn't yet discussed. Luffy talked about his journey and the people, but that he won in the East Blue. Yuta talked about her life on the island and how she made friends with some of them. Everyone loved the girl. Yuta got a bit loose with the wine while Luffy managed to resist better. "Tell me, Luffy, do you still love me?" she suddenly asked, which made Luffy raise an eyebrow. "You're drunk, I won't have this kind of conversation with you." Luffy shrugged. "But our promise was to stay together." "You're married, you broke our promise," she murmured in the last part. "Do you love me, Yuta?" Luffy asked. "Of course I do. I've always loved you. I wished we could stay together, maybe even in that small village in the East Blue, but so much happened. Still, I had hoped you would come here to take me after Shanks left me." "But when you finally come, you have someone else," she said, quite sad with the effect of the drink. The few people that were there looked surprised at Yuta's words. "Sorry about that." She realized her words and apologized. "I'm exaggerating, can you take me home?" she said, and Luffy sighed. It seems this night wasn't as pleasant as he imagined, but he respected Yuta. Luffy paid the bill and they left the restaurant. "Can you carry me on your back?" Yuta suddenly asked. "On my back? How about we fly a bit?" Luffy asked. "Fly? Can you do that?" she asked, surprised, and before she could react, Luffy grabbed her like a princess and flew into the sky. "This is amazing," she murmured fearlessly as she looked at the island below them and the moon in the sky. Luffy made this kind of trip until her house, landing softly at the door. "I've never flown before," she said excitedly. At least she had a moment of fun and without drama during that night. "I'm glad you liked it." Luffy gave a small smile. "Let's go inside, you'll sleep here tonight," she said and opened the door. "I'll sleep on the couch then," Luffy commented as he arranged the space in the living room while the girl entered the bedroom without saying anything. "Luffy, you don't need to sleep on the couch." Luffy heard Yuta open the door and saw her naked looking at him while covering her breasts. I want you, Luffy. I want at least one night with the man I love," she said timidly, but with some courage. Luffy would talk to her tomorrow about these things. He wanted her as his woman too in this life, and would speak when she was more sober, but seeing her naked looking with desire, even with a bit of alcohol for courage, how could Luffy refuse this woman? Chapter 207, Yuta 03, R18. Third person POV. Allegia, South Blue. Luffy stood up calmly and approached the naked Yuta. You really want this? I don't want to take advantage of you while you're drunk. We can talk about it tomorrow, he said as he stood a few centimeters from the girl still covering her breasts. I want you, Luffy. Maybe we can't be together, but I want you for tonight and I want you to be the person I sleep with. So at least give me that, she said with a big blush on her face. Fine, but don't think it'll be just one night or that I'll leave you after making you mine. Luffy commented openly. He had never intended to let this woman walk out of his life. Yuta looked at him shyly, but didn't speak, thinking that Luffy was only saying it to please her, but she didn't think it was bad either. Even if it was a lie, she fell for the pirate's sweet words. She took the initiative and kissed him passionately, and Luffy put the girl at ease as he took hold of her waist. She had never kissed anyone before in her life and Luffy sensed this in her awkward kiss, but led her on to make the most of his oldest friend. Luffy caught her calmly getting up and going into her room while not disconnecting from her mouth and led her to the bed. She let go of him looking at him with a saliva of desire on her lips. Take off your shirt, she ordered, and Luffy removed his night clothes as he went on top of the girl. Seeing her staring at him with difficulty breathing while there was a glint of desire in those purple eyes had made Luffy quite aroused. He attacked her the next moment as he pressed his chest against her breasts and crushed her with another kiss. Ah! She moaned as Luffy took his mouth away to kiss her neck, making the girl shiver with excitement, his lips moving past her neck as he began to explore her body. Lemon scene happened. I still want to continue. That was so good, Luffy. I want to enjoy it more, she said with difficulty breathing and drunk on strong emotions at that moment. Yes, come on. I'll do as much as you want, but let's take a break, he said, wanting her to rest a little before continuing. After all, they had many hours before daylight. Yes, she said, putting her head against Luffy's chest, while he hugged her back with the hand underneath and squeezed her ass with one hand, feeling her serious breasts crush against his chest. They stayed like that for a while, just enjoying each other's body heat. After an hour, they had started all over again. Luffy took advantage of Yuta as best he could. He taught her how to do all sorts of pleasures, while the room went into a sequence of moans as Yuta and Luffy came for the next few hours. The sun finally came out, sweeping away the night as they continued to enjoy each other's time as man and woman. Chapter 208, Yuta 04. Third person POV. Allegia, South Blue. Luffy woke up the next morning next to Yuta. The girl was naked while he embraced her in his arms after a great session of sex between them. She seemed quite tired, but at the same time, carefree. It seems we are finally together, Luffy thought, as he enjoyed having her in his arms. After all, he still remembered the promise they made as children to live together no matter what happens, so he was a little excited about it. At that moment, Yuta began to wake up, fluttering her eyelashes, as she looked against the morning light into her room and found herself in the arms that enveloped her chest and stomach, making her memories immediately surface about what happened last night with quite a surprise. She was a bit scared, seeing that even though it was great and she really wanted Luffy with the help of alcohol, they had done all those things despite him being a married man. After all, he had not denied that fact. Worried, Yuta looked at Luffy's hands where she felt his hands squeezing her bare breasts. Luffy. She broke the silence between them. What we did yesterday wasn't right. I was drunk, she commented with a certain tone of regret. Although Luffy felt sadness, he was surprised and even a bit disappointed hearing that. Luffy calmly looked at her hair while lying behind her. That's strange, you seem to have liked it a lot, he said, seeing that it relieved the mood, not wanting to appear disappointed now. She did not disagree with his words, leaving her with a great blush on her face without Luffy being able to hear, but at the same time wanting to slap that guy, while she still felt her breasts being crushed by his hands. Luffy, you have a wife. How can you say something like that? She exclaimed, dissatisfied. After all, what would she be? Just his mistress? Yes, you're right, I have a wife. However, it's not who you imagine if you're thinking of Yamato, Luffy commented in a neutral tone, and Yuta was a bit surprised. Yamato and I have a relationship, but I haven't married her yet. I got married a few days ago in Amazon Lily with Boa Hancock, the pirate empress, and we formed an alliance. Luffy commented and continued. As you can see, Yuta, I intend to have many wives. After all, I am a selfish man with a big family. How can you say something like that? Yuta commented. She was familiar with polygamy, but it was still hard to get used to since it was practiced only in some parts of the world and by great nobles. Even great ones like Gold Roger, Monkey D. Garp had monogamous relationships. I'm simply saying that I'm a selfish man, and I want you with me. You've always had a place with me, ever since we were children. Luffy spoke. I never lied when I said I would take you with me. I would like you by my side before we leave the island and sail together. Yuta turned her face surprised, wondering if Luffy was telling the truth. She sighed with a sad heart. Luffy, you really are that kind of man. Luffy remained expressionless and simply replied calmly. What can I say? You're talking to the man who wants to conquer the entire sea. You know, I've always been selfish and ambitious. Yes, I have women I love by my side. That's always been something I planned, and you've always had your place with me. Ever since I found out about your whereabouts, I've always hoped you would come with me. This island doesn't do you well, Yuta, and you know it. He said. She turned against him, staring at him with a certain anger, no longer caring about her naked body. Luffy, I can't just go away. This is all so sudden, I can't just go with you. She spoke while Luffy just stared at her with still a neutral face. Luffy didn't know how truly divided Yuta was. After everything she remembered from last night, his words, the feelings she felt while they were making love, the carefree emotion upon waking up in the arms of the man she always loved. Yuta was torn. On one side there was the promise she had made along with her feelings, on the other, she had built her life here and did not want to lose everything again like what happened when she was a child, while also struggling with the jealousy of Luffy having other women he claimed to love. This made her turn her face away and start to have tears in her eyes. Yuta. Luffy spoke again, seeing her crying. I don't want to leave you, you should be by my side. It's not right, Luffy. She said amidst the tears. You're a pirate wanted all over the world, you know how much I hate that. I don't want that kind of life. I hate violence. You and I can't be together. She exclaimed. She began, seeming like her heart was starting to shatter with the following words. I want you to go away. Even though it felt like there were needles in her heart with each of those words, Yuta said this through her tears. Luffy was silent for a while. Then he simply lifted her from his arms and began to rise from the bed. I guess you're right, he said as he was going to grab his clothes to leave. Yuta remained frozen on the bed as soon as Luffy left her, trembling without knowing what she had said. I'm leaving, Luffy said in a tone that was even a bit tired. Yuta remained on the bed while her world seemed to collapse with her there frozen. Goodbye, Yuta. I hope you achieve everything you aim for in life, Luffy commented and left the room. Luffy went to the door, knowing that once he passed through there, everything between him and Yuta was over and they would just be strangers. Walking to the door and pulling the handle, something stopped him. I'm sorry. He felt his back being pressed with the girl hugging him while trembling. Sorry, she said again while her jacket was getting wet with her tears. Sorry, she repeated, and Luffy said nothing with his hand on the handle. Sorry, she shouted, waiting for a response from Luffy, who still hadn't said anything. Please, sorry, talk to me. I don't want you to leave, she continued exclaiming while trembling and crying, hugging his back. Sorry. I don't want you to go away, I don't want you to leave me, I don't want to lose you too. I lost everything one day and you are someone I don't want to leave me. I thought you leaving would be better for both of us, but I'm mistaken. I can't stand to see you go away. I'll be your wife. I'll accept your other women, I'll accept that you're a pirate, but don't leave me. I love you, I've always loved you. I don't want anyone else in my life but you, Luffy, so don't leave me, she said as her tears continued to pour. Luffy turned to face her for the first time. He let go of the handle and looked at her, while she looked back at him with fear, as if he was going to disappear and never appear again, something that Luffy planned as soon as he was scorned by this woman. He would never accept someone like that again. I spoke the truth, Yuta. He began speaking for the first time. I want you in my life and we have a promise, one that I was willing to fulfill, but you know what kind of life I have, you know what kind of person I am. I have my own ambitions, you know that I will go to war with the world if necessary to achieve my goals, and that will probably happen. Luffy spoke and continued. Everything you hate, I'm going to do. I'm not a lover of peace, I'm not a good Samaritan, I'm not a good person, you are a good person, not me. He sighed and continued. You want to build a happy world? I want to build a world of freedom, and for that to happen, it will only happen on a mountain of blood and many people will die for my ambitions. Do you really want to go through that by my side? Luffy said in a serious tone while looking into Yuta's trembling eyes. Because if that's not the case, I'll walk out that door and we'll never see each other again. If you really want to be with me, you have to be prepared to go through all of this. Are you really willing to endure everything I'm going to do, even being what you hate the most? He asked with the same serious tone. Yuta continued crying, just looking and listening to everything Luffy was saying. She was a bit torn, despite her heart still screaming to follow this man. After a second of hesitation, she finally decided, hugging him tightly. I will stay with you, I will follow you no matter what happens. Don't leave me. I don't want to lose you again. She kept crying. No matter the path you choose, I will be by your side. Luffy stared at her for a moment, making sure her words were true, that she would indeed endure the atrocities he would do in the future. Then, for the first time, Luffy returned the hug, covering her naked body again. In the end, time passed in that house, and the sun continued to rise that morning until it reached midday. Luffy and Yuta were having coffee after talking a bit more. The crying had been replaced by laughter with each other, like a couple in love. In the end, she sat on his lap to have coffee while he hugged her. They seemed to have come out of a honeymoon, very different from the atmosphere that almost broke this bond forever. Ha, you remind me of Lucy, Yuta said, watching Luffy devour the food. I might be a glutton, but I still can't out-eat my sister, you know that, he said with a small smile. At that moment, a knock on the door was heard. Yuta looked a bit surprised, as almost no one comes to bother her in the morning. Now she was already dressed, though only wearing shorts and a t-shirt. She went to the door, opened it, and was surprised, for it was the king of Elegia, Gordon. He was there to see her, after hearing a rumor that Yuta had gone to dinner with a man, which left him quite surprised and even cautious, since Yuta never cared for the boys on the island. Knowing that she was going out with someone surprised him. So, he came to check for himself but was even more shocked to see the man sitting in a chair in Yuta's kitchen. And it was not just any man, but a pirate worth 750 million berries. A pirate who had caused big news in the world and now was there, eating at Yuta's table. What is this? Isn't this the pirate Monkey D, Luffy? Gordon commented, and Yuta looked for a moment before speaking. Yes, he is Monkey D. Luffy, and my childhood friend, she said, surprising the king, since he did not know that Yuta had a connection with this pirate from the Monkey D family. Monkey D. Luffy got up from the table and approached the king of Elegia with a characteristic smile. Hello, I am Monkey D. Luffy, the man who will conquer all evils. And you are the king of this country, aren't you? Yuta wanted to hit Luffy at that moment as she stared at him seriously. Gordon was once again surprised by the man's statement. Well, this is a surprise to see you here. Are you here to visit a friend? He asked Luffy, but Luffy just smiled. No, I'm here to pick up my woman, Luffy spoke confidently, leaving the man even more stunned. What does that mean, Yuta? He turned to the girl as she seemed quite shy. It's true. Luffy and I are more than friends. I've always loved him and waited for him for years. Now, because he appeared, I am willing to go with him. She said still shyly, a bit reluctant to say this to the man who raised her. Elegia looked at his adoptive daughter quite surprised and then at Luffy, and turning back to her, he asked seriously, do you really want this? She answered, her heart guiding her, yes, I want to be with him. Will you really take care of her? He looked at Luffy at that moment also asking seriously. Yes, but things are still not settled, since I still have a demon to kill on this island. Luffy commented, thinking of the creature that caused chaos years ago and Luffy had to finish what Shanks couldn't complete more than a decade ago, the origin of all the pain in Yuta. Chapter 209 Yuta 05. Third-person POV. Allegia, South Blue. I'm creating an AU here. I didn't know how to deal with Tot Musica, so I made him in a different way just to destroy him. After Luffy had declared his intention, the room fell silent. Are you serious? Gordon asked alarmed, breaking the silence, and Yuta was surprised by Luffy. Luffy looked at him and said calmly, I wanted to solve a problem once and for all. Shrugging with both being quite surprised by this, then Luffy reveals, I know the demon is still trapped and I know that in the future it could free itself. Shanks couldn't destroy them many years ago, but I can, with my powers. Luffy said confidently. Gordon was a bit cautious about this. Are you sure about this? Do you know what you're getting into? This could cause the destruction of the island. Yes, I know. That's why I want to destroy it. It will be dangerous for the next eras, when the Yuta no Mi falls into the hands of another user. He said, looking at Yuta. Gordon looked at him for a while before turning his eyes to Yuta, who seemed to hesitate against it, as she wasn't foolish enough not to know the truth of what happened many years ago, even if she doesn't know everything. Luffy breaks the silence. I don't want to waste any more time with this, he speaks. I intend to destroy it today. I just need you to evacuate the area of the sanctuary. He said in turn to Yuta. You will come with me to summon, and I will destroy it. Don't worry, we will finish this. Luffy said, approaching. Yuta looked scared. Don't worry. I'll destroy it. Luffy said, taking her hand. Trust me. Despite the reluctance, Gordon ended up accepting, as this seems to be a pirate capable of doing so. Given his fame in the newspaper, while Yuta trusts Luffy's words. Let's go. Luffy picks up Yuta and Gordon was going to make an announcement for everyone to leave a certain area of the island. Luffy and Yuta fly to a certain area below the Allegia crystals. There was a wall with a scripture, one that Yuta found many years ago and was enchanted with the lettering and began to sing, causing the demon's release. Let's wait a bit, as people need to leave the area while Gordon makes the announcement. He said, sitting down in a place and asking Yuta to stay by his side. Luffy, will everything be okay? She asked, still cautious. Yes, I'll take care of this, don't worry too much about it. Luffy comments, as Yuta leans on his shoulder and begins to sing a melody without lyrics. 1 hour later, Luffy sighs. I think it's time for us to start. Gordon must have done his job in clearing the area. Let's begin. Luffy comments, and Yuta nods, approaching the area where there was the stone with the music that only Yuta could read and sing. I trust you, Luffy, she sighs and starts to sing the song. Luffy remains quiet in a corner, just listening and even enjoying the music. As the music was sung, Yuta didn't seem very comfortable, but continued to sing anyway. As soon as it reached a certain part of the song, the entire wall began to glow and started emitting a blinding light while everything began to tremble. Luffy? She asked worriedly. You can stop, the creature is coming out. He comments, looking at the crystal above the door, starting to crack as a shadow begins to emerge from it. Then the crystal explodes, flying pieces everywhere. Luffy quickly grabs Yuta and dodges the debris while placing her in a safe area far away. A shadow falls from the crystal and lands on the ground, over 100 meters tall with an iconic appearance. The colossal creature quickly roared, I am free, with its dark and powerful voice. The entire island heard it and was frightened. The creature looked around with a smile, saying, now that I am free, I will destroy you for imprisoning me again here more than 12 years ago. It laughed loudly, but didn't notice the small figure approaching its head at an almost imperceptible speed coming from below. This figure looked at its chin, approaching, pulling back its fist as the hockey coating did its job. Then, it delivered a punch with an explosive sound, echoing throughout the area when the demon hadn't even noticed its approach. The demon felt the pain of the impact, making it shoot up into the sky, a few meters, feeling dazed by such a sudden attack. Before the demon could try to balance itself, Luffy appeared in front of it. So you're the one they call Tot Musica? Luffy asks in front of its face using Jeppo. Who are you? Tot Musica murmurs, a bit dazed. Luffy doesn't respond and prepares to launch another punch at the demon. His hockey training wasn't limited to Skypiea, but through the training he had on the Cone Belt Islands, he evolved much more than anyone else in this world in a short period. Before the demon could react, Luffy ran towards it, punching it so hard that once again it was launched backward, but now falling to the ground in a mountainous area with forests outside the city area, exploding the entire area with its body, even making the island tremble. And Luffy didn't stop there. He concentrated as flames began to cover him, transforming into Ifrit with an explosion of light in the middle of the sky. As soon as the purple flames left the air, Luffy in his final form was seen by the entire island. The inhabitants, already scared of Tot Musica, became even more alarmed with another creature appearing. What's happening? That's the demon from 12 years ago. Who is that creature? I remember, it's Monkey D. Luffy. I saw in the newspaper that he can transform into a demon of purple flames. King Gordon told us to stay away, but can we escape from these creatures? Luffy used a part of his Moa Moa no Mi to double his size and match against the creature, and then flies to where Tot Musica had fallen. Tot Musica was getting up when he saw another creature falling on top of him, devastating the entire area immediately. You damn! Tot Musica yells, but takes a punch from Luffy flying backward and destroying trees. He gets up and angrily tries to punch Ifrit, but Luffy grabbed his arm in a moment, and then moves his other hand and a punch to the chin made the creature spit blood flying backward again. After receiving the punch to the chin, the demon made a pained expression, and before it could speak, another punch from Luffy hit it. He tried to retaliate the punches from Ifrit, but Luffy moved his head, avoiding it, and then received two punches to the chest, a right jab and a left jab, making the creature fly backward and devastate a forest until it collided with a mountain near the coast. Luffy thought about how he could kill this creature besides just beating it up. Then, he looked at the crystal in the middle of the island and had an idea. If the crystal could trap the demon, then it could also hurt it. He spread his wings and flew toward the large crystal while Tot Musica was still within the mountain. Ifrit flew and grabbed it with its flaming claws and used its strength to increase the pressure, trying to separate a tip of the crystals from the entire body. The crystal immediately began to crack, with the sound of glass breaking, and the cracks continued until they enveloped the entire crystal. At that part where Luffy grabbed it, with another snap, he released the crystal from the rest. The demon was still on the ground trying to get up, but then saw a ball of flames in the sky coming towards it. It was Luffy with the crystal, and sensing a certain danger, wondered how this was happening. Now that it was finally free, how it seemed to be getting beaten by an unknown creature. Luffy then hurled the crystal at it, flying like a meteor towards the ground. However, the demon used all its power trying to stop the crystal as it approached its chest. I won't let this happen, the demon growled, using all its strength to stop the crystal, which, in the end, collided with its flames. Luffy said nothing, just continued pushing the crystal against its chest, trying to force it. Little by little, the demon began to yield to Luffy's strength, which was much stronger. Luffy managed to push the crystal into the chest of the demon, making the ground around tremble and explode as the crystal pierced the creature's chest. With the creature screaming, "Impossible! I cannot die here." But Luffy said nothing and saw that not even the crystal could kill him, so he opted to unleash his flames of chaos. With an opening in his chest, Luffy launched his flames into it, intending to destroy the creature from the inside out. Tot Musica began screaming in pain, asking how this was happening. His skin began to turn gray, disintegrating near the crystal and flames entering him, and it began to spread throughout the rest of his body. He knew for the first time that he was dying. In the end, the last part of his body disintegrated and turned to dust by the flames of chaos, leaving Luffy just sticking the crystal into the ground, making the whole area of the forest tremble and crack, as if Whitebeard himself was there. Luffy landed softly on the ground, still with the crystal in hand. He looked at where he had finished with the creature inside. His body began to glow, and his transformation undone, returning to the form of a small human. Falling to the ground and looking satisfied, he thought, that was easy. Luffy had to admit, since he finished Tot Musica without destroying much of the island. Luffy then returned to where he had left Yuta. Upon arriving, he found her with a worried look. "It's over," Luffy comments, making the girl look at him in surprise. "Luffy, Are you okay? She approaches quickly, but Luffy was fine. Yes, it's all over now, Yuta. There's no more demon putting this island in danger. Luffy comments. Yuta hugged him and started to cry, saying repeatedly, "Thank you." Luffy just smiled at her. Then, he took her home. Gordon, who had been waiting for them, worried, was informed that Luffy had destroyed the demon that had been pressuring them and that they would never need to worry about it again. So it's all over? He said in the end with relief. Although some parts of the island were destroyed, everything had ended quickly. He then turned back to Yuta. Are you leaving then? He asks, and she nods with a hint of sadness. We're going to stay one more day here. I think Yuta needs to say goodbye to everyone before we leave. Luffy comments and Gordon nods. She spent the day with Luffy and packing her things to travel with her man. Gordon went to notify everyone on the island about Yuta's departure. Since Yuta was well known for her talent, many already knew of the situation and knew that Monkey D. Luffy was on the island, since his Ifrit form appeared many times in the newspapers and only one person could cast purple flames in the world. The next day, a crowd of people came to say goodbye to Yuta in front of her isolated house. She began to thank everyone and everyone was also thanking Luffy after finding out that he had destroyed the demon that caused chaos on the island more than 12 years ago, with them finally getting rid of that fear of all. Luffy nodded to everyone thanking them and waited in a corner while Yuta talked to people she had known for many years. After a while, she returned to where Luffy was waiting. He nodded and grabbed her, before opening his wings to the sky. It's time, Luffy said, for us to leave. Then all of Elegia saw Luffy and Yuta departing into the sky. Luffy took off, heading to the next step of his plans, excited to have a person he loved by his side now. Chapter 210 Return. Third person POV. Calm Belt, first half of Grand Line. Luffy quickly traveled to the Grand Line, carrying Yuta the entire way. Their luggage was significantly reduced thanks to Luffy's power while being kept in his pocket. This is fun. Yuta couldn't help but exclaim, as they flew at high speed, leaving the South Blue and entering the Calm Belt. Sometime later, the sky began to form small clouds, and a cold wind hit Luffy's face. Looks like we're in for a storm. Luffy commented, sensing the change in weather, typical of the Grand Line, known for its chaos and unpredictability. Soon, the sky darkened with clouds covering the sun, and a strong wind began to beat against Luffy and Yuta. Luffy? Yuta immediately said, getting a bit scared by it. Soon a heavy rain began to fall, and the scenery changed from a sunny day to a powerful storm with lightning falling with the rain and hurricanes forming all over the place, taking over the entire environment. With Luffy still frightened, Luffy continued into the storm, and suddenly his haki alerted him about lightning coming in his direction. Luffy quickly changed his direction and dodged the lightning while Yuta screamed in fear. Luffy, this is getting dangerous, she shouted, quite scared. He couldn't blame her, since she was never a fighter and hardly ever faced dangers, so Luffy nodded and decided to leave there. Probably it had already turned night by the time they were in the storm. Luffy just smiled and flew upwards this time, going against the clouds in the sky. In this path, more lightning began to fall while Luffy started dodging them and going against the wind. A huge hurricane appeared in front of him and he released his power over the wind, causing a huge explosion in the middle of the storm and lighting up the area. Boom, asterisk. Other hurricanes appeared in this path and he continued destroying them with his flames, causing colossal explosions. Boom, asterisk. Boom, asterisk. Boom. Asterisk. Yuta was still very scared in that chaos and clung to Luffy to make sure he wouldn't leave her. Luffy still continued the path to the clouds and it didn't take long for him to reach them. His visibility was limited, and he felt the humidity of the substance with a slightly low temperature. It's the first time I enter a cloud, but it wasn't the experience I imagined. Yuta exclaimed and Luffy wanted to laugh. His haki alerted him once more, as an electric current began to form inside the cloud before discharging outside. Luffy saw the line of electricity and began to dodge from right to left and vice versa, dodging that current. He continued in this while dodging the entire time from the electric currents forming, until he reached the edge of the storm before emerging into the sky above it. The environment changed, and Yuta looked at the place with bright eyes, as they saw a scenery of a starry sky with a huge full moon in the sky. Below them, there was still a sea of clouds casting lightning in favor of gravity. So beautiful. Yuta murmured admiringly at the scenery. Luffy just smiled and continued their journey over the storm. They followed for the next hours of the night in that scenery through the calm belt, leaving it and entering the Grand Line. Luffy saw an island with a small kingdom and decided to stop there to rest and continue the journey the next day. After putting on disguises and choosing a small inn in a kingdom, they slept together again, repeating their intercourse from the previous night, and the next day they immediately left that kingdom in the same morning. Luffy continued following the Vivre card towards Skypiea. After a few hours, he finally found an archipelago of islands floating in that direction heading to the Sky Kingdom. Knowing it was Bepo, he went straight in that direction, while Yuta was still amazed by it, wondering how islands flew in the sky. How incredible! She was seeing things she had never witnessed before. Meanwhile, at Shiki's former base, Bepo was taking care of the place. He had become quite brave after putting on his wig, and he began beating up everyone who still tried to rebel or seek revenge on the former captain. There were hundreds of bodies lying on the ground, all injured, and everyone looked at Bepo with fear, as he crossed his arms and with a calculating look surveyed everyone, while they all trembled and averted their eyes to avoid being beaten again. Even the gorillas were lying on the ground beaten. He had quickly taken control of the place in the last few days. Luffy approached and couldn't help whistling, seeing the situation and understanding with just one glance. I see you've taken control of this place, Bepo. Luffy suddenly appeared behind him, with Yuta in his arms. Bepo looked at him excitedly. Captain, you're finally back. I've taken care of everything as you asked. Bepo spoke with pride, and Luffy nodded with a smile while putting Yuta down. Well, this is quite moving, Luffy comments with a satisfied smile and continues. Now we're getting close to Skypiea, so let's get ready to see the rest of the crew, Luffy comments before introducing Yuta, and they settle in while Bepo leaves the islands, heading to the place. Luffy spent the next 2 days with Yuta, reviewing the doctor's research and seeing how he could use it to his advantage. In Skypiea, the crew, as well as the fleet members and the population of Skypiea itself, were training at full steam. In the last month, even though Luffy only appeared once to deliver new fleet members, they still continued training and evolving, feeling stronger and stronger. However, one day, in the middle of training, shadows began to appear in Skypiea. Everyone immediately looked up alarmed at the number of floating islands approaching the place, not understanding how this was happening. This looks like the power of the few Nomi. Is Shiki invading Skypiea? Nojiko comments while fighting against her sister in a corner of the island. She had absorbed a lot of knowledge in the last months, so she was aware of all the possible information. We better check, I don't think he could find us like this. Nami comments. Luffy hadn't told his real reason for taking Bepo with him, so this surprised them, although somewhat strong observation Haki felt Luffy like Yamato and even Usopp. But the inhabitants of Skypiea were frightened by this, wondering where those bunches of floating rocks came from and what would happen to them. To avoid any misunderstanding, Luffy quickly approached them, and shouting with his tone amplified to warn everyone about what was happening. His voice reached everyone, saying that these islands belonged to the Straw Hat crew and that they would be part of Skypiea from that moment on. Luffy looked satisfied and asked for Bepo to bring Yuta while he approached Black Pearl on the ground of the island, where they used to sleep and have a party around the ship. Luffy, you finally came back. I hope you're here to stay, right? Nami approached, crossing her arms, somewhat dissatisfied. Luffy just smiled. Of course, I'm here to stay now. It didn't take long for more and more crew members to join them while he was waiting on the ship. All the official and unofficial members appeared, even the former god of Skypiea and the Shandians members came to greet Luffy. Pleased with the crowd that formed, he began to speak. Hello, everyone. Now my travels are over. I've settled all the pending matters I had, and will spend some more time training before returning to the Blue Sea, Luffy commented. Luffy! Chopper cried. You look stronger, Captain. I see you haven't stopped training. Hugo commented with a calculating look. Captain, I want to fight with you to see if we are still far apart in strength, Zoro declares from the side, with a challenging glint in his eye. Luffy looked pleased. That's good. Let's do that later. But first, let me introduce some people and what happened while I was away, he begins. To start, these floating islands are thanks to Beepo's power, Luffy said, as Beepo approached and Yuta was placed on top of a rock that the polar bear had set her on. Everyone was surprised by this, since they hadn't imagined Beepo would use this ability. Wait, Luffy. Isn't that Shiki the Golden Lion's ability? He could make things float, Lami comments, all amazed. Exactly. I had to kill Shiki and gave his fruit to Beepo. Now we have a new force in the group, Luffy said satisfied, looking at Beepo. Without his wig at the moment, he seemed quite shy. That's amazing. And to think that our assistant can send meteors from the sky, can't he? Usopp spoke with admiration, while Beepo was embarrassed, almost apologizing for the attention and gazes. You're amazing, Beepo-sama. Shirahoshi said. Luffy waited for the members to finish expressing themselves and continued. Second point, this is another new member of the crew, our official ship singer, Luffy said, pointing to the girl who looked at everyone carefully, mainly analyzing the women Luffy was relating to on this ship. The women, knowing how Yuta looked at Luffy, knew that something was between them. A singer? That's what our ship needed, Vivi said excitedly. That Luffy, it's clear she's more than a singer to him, Nami said dissatisfied, looking surely for his interaction, while Nojiko just smiled without caring too much about it on the side. Well, and third and not least, I got married, Luffy declared with a smile, making all the crew members look shocked at him. What do you mean, Luffy, you got married? Vivi commented, looking stunned, even leaving Luffy a bit curious about her reaction. I ended up meeting someone and made a pact with her. We ended up spending time on an island and... Well, she got pregnant, Luffy commented, murmuring, while leaving everyone even more shocked. Luffy, what do you mean by got pregnant? Nami seemed shocked. It's a long story, but as it ended up happening, we got married, since I won't have any illegitimate child, Luffy declares, while all the women wanted to hit him. Even Yuta, who didn't know about this, looked angry, but Luffy shrugged. He would take care of them later. Well, we have alliances and new fleet members, now let's talk about the next plans. We're going to stay together the whole time and I'll be here with you for 1 more month, and we'll go to the Blue Sea as soon as the time is up, because big things are going to happen. And I have a Shichibukai and an important member of a Yonko as prisoners. So, it won't be long before powerful people come here to find Skypiea, something I don't want. I believe we still have a month before sorting things out, Luffy comments, and everyone feels reassured by this. Now, I need to know how things are, Luffy comments, looking at Yamato. The girl thinks for a bit and starts to speak. As you planned, Luffy, all the fleet members are evolving, even those you brought after giving them a beating, they started training and seemed to integrate into the crew. They began to be obedient, Yamato comments, and Luffy looks towards where Foxy and the others should be, all of them just nodding their heads, since they suffered a lot in the last days. Luffy looks satisfied. His next plan was to train a lot, since he was preparing for war. Good, then let's start training, Luffy declares, as now he would use all the power of his Moa Moa no Mi to drastically increase everyone's evolution, making them so powerful that, in the war, the entire world would be astonished by the strength of this crew. Now where is my pirate Captain Monkey? Luffy comments while far from the ship, there was a huge chimpanzee hiding from Luffy. Chapter 211 A Month of Training. Third-person POV. Skypiea, first half of Grand Line. Days began to pass since Luffy started his training, first by putting Chopper to work with Doctor to improve the genetics of already modified animals with a type of new drug. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he wanted to make the animals even more powerful for training after the war. If that happens, he will really be quite useful before Luffy invades the New World. But that didn't stop his crew from enjoying the current modified animals, especially the fleet that was on the island training. The members of the Baroque Works, the Giants, key members of Skypiea, and Foxy's crew with Shiki's, were suffering at the hands of those animals while exploring the floating islands. Shiki had done a great job with those animals, despite his macabre plan which was based on destroying the East Blue to take revenge on Roger. Luffy made great use of them after his death and would make a considerable force in the world in this location, even without his main crew. He had at least 10,000 members training, 6,000 soldiers from Skypiea to defend the kingdom, and 4,000 summing all the additions he put in his fleet. The fleet was learning the 6 styles, making a force as powerful as the Navy elite, while the captains in the fleet or main soldiers learned the 6 styles and were training with haki. Every member who already had high strength had increased at least tens of times with their current strength. 6 styles, fruits, and haki, this was Luffy's rigorous training. Of course, Luffy had this result because there was no mercy from anyone while he trained them hard, making everyone reach their limit every day. Luffy was also satisfied with the main crew. There were no more weak people among them, even the animals seemed a force to be reckoned with. It was fun to see the dog, whale, duck fighting each other while unleashing an entire forest area. As Luffy had spent a month and Luffy managed to further increase the power of his fruits, Moa Moa no Mi had increased to 80 times its scope, and when Luffy increased his training speed by 8 times, the system doubled that with the crew, achieving a result of 16 times, which in a month, more than a year of training, even those who were not talented with haki and his fruit, had exponential growth. Many people from the sea during this period reported explosions in the sky below Skypiea and even saw explosions at night, mainly in Jaya, but no one could investigate. After all the results and the strength of the crew currently, the training was finally ending and they were preparing to return to their journey, at least the main crew. Today in particular, Luffy was in a fight. The sky was clear while the sun bathed all the islands with its light. However, at the top, at a higher altitude, a flame flew through the sky. From afar, it looked small, but it was 4 kilometers above Skypiea. This flame was heading towards another dark red energy, which approached the purple flame. At the same time, when they collided, a huge explosion emerged from the sky between the two forces, exploding and affecting everything around, even kilometers away. As the nearby clouds dissipated or moved away, even in Skype, the islands were trembling with the force of the two energies colliding. On one side, Zoro carried his 3 swords, imbued with Odin's dark energy, while Luffy, using Ace, fought against Zoro using the power of Chaos Flames. They had launched this attack at a distance between the two forces. After the collision, the explosion happened, forming a cloud of smoke, but that didn't stop the two from advancing against each other at supersonic speed as a blur in the sky, with the strength of the last month's training. Luffy and Zoro had reached a new level of strength. Then, a moment later, the 3-sword style, Santorio, collides with Luffy's 1-sword style, Itoryu. The impact in the air between the two cracked, as their swords were coated with haki. The sound of metal along with the force of the speed they used, created a force, causing another impact explosion, spreading the air in all directions. A moment later, Luffy and Zoro spring into action again, just backing off a bit. Their swords began to collide rapidly, against each other. Soon, that space became an explosion of clashing cuts, hundreds of meters away. Even the seafarers of the Grand Line could hear the explosions of the swords, colliding in the distance. Luffy-chan and Zoro-chan are quite excited, Bentham commented, doing his characteristic ballet spin while shouting and looking up at the sky. "Are we safe here?" Mr. 3 commented beside him, trying to shield himself from the wind generated by the fight. "I just hope they don't destroy the island," Kuina complained beside them, as she clutched her sword, waiting for any attack escaping from them and heading towards the islands. "It looks like you're right," Reiju commented, smoking a cigarette, as she saw one of Luffy and Zoro's attacks fall among them, heading towards Skypiea. Kuina sighed and calmly drew her sword from the sheath, Tensa Zangetsu, and a cold energy began to emanate from her weapon. She quickly sliced through the air, launching an attack against the energy coming towards the upper yard. The energies collided in the air, generating another explosion. Boom! Asterisk. Meanwhile, the fight between Zoro and Luffy continues in the sky. It was just a friendly fight. However, Luffy wanted to test using his current sword skills with the most powerful swordsman on his ship. The movement between the two was so fast that both were even smiling, enjoying the fight as they raced through space before colliding with their swords and launching attacks with their energies at each other. Explosions happened all the time, and they kept at it for 12 hours, until nightfall, and the sky glowed with both of their attacks, Luffy's amethyst flame explosions and Zoro's darkness. As they fought, Luffy at one point stopped moving his sword and Zoro quickly did the same. "I think that's enough for today." "It was fun," Luffy commented with a smile. "You're right, Captain." "It was a great fight," Zoro said, laughing. Luffy was satisfied with his current power in fencing. He could say he was above Momonga, still below Zoro and Kuina, but he could use his powers to surpass them despite his deficiency. Luffy didn't fight seriously with Zoro, he just wanted to test his skills in this combat, that's why they didn't even transform into their icons. After sheathing Ace and Zoro doing the same, Luffy spoke while looking at the moon. Let's go back. We have a banquet to make, Luffy says, then let's gravity do the work as he lets his body fall to return to Skypiea. Zoro nods and begins to descend as well. Everyone was waiting for them, since no one could have peace while the explosions happened in the air and Kuina and even Yamato had to combat the attacks coming down. Well, I guess we'll celebrate a bit, Luffy announces after landing before Zoro. Then the banquet started again, a quite recurring event in the last month to relieve the days of hard training, where everyone participated and Luffy had a large stock of food, even if that stock was on the old islands of Shiki. Luffy, try this. Vivi approached handing him some food. She seemed much more attentive to Luffy in the last month. This wasn't surprising for Luffy, since they end up having sex at one point with Vivi declaring herself to Luffy wanting to have a family with him as well. Luffy wasn't foolish not to have seen the girl's signs of attraction towards him, but was surprised that she took the initiative to approach him as soon as they had some alone time. Try this too, Luffy. Yuta appeared by his side while leaning on her captain and man. This is really good, Luffy said quietly with a smile. He knew why they were acting like this, since after Luffy had announced that he got married, the girls were quite unsatisfied and demanded that from him as well. Then he had to prepare to marry all of them there before leaving Skypiea, a requirement made by all. So they were training to be good wives, in their own words, which Luffy didn't mind and just enjoyed being surrounded by beautiful women wanting to catch his attention. With Hancock, Luffy had to give her special attention, as she called him every day, saying she missed him and demanding that they see each other, but Luffy said he needed to train a bit longer and they would meet soon, but he always asked how her pregnancy was going and if she needed anything or how the babies were. He had to admit he was quite paranoid about it, but they were his first children and he had never been a father, so he believed it was normal. Listen everyone. Luffy got up from his chair surrounded by his future wives and looked at everyone who was at the banquet. Thousands of people around the ship were around large bonfires in the area. Listening to Luffy's voice, everyone stopped at that moment to look at the pirate captain. We are in our last days here. I will depart with my crew in the next few days. The fleet will continue training on these islands, since people will be able to keep the islands in the air, no matter where he is. Luffy spoke in his amplified tone and continued. This era is about to end and I want to keep our strength hidden from the world for now, not wanting to attract attention. However, at the turn of the era, we will act, we will show our power to the entire world, since this will be the beginning of our era and we will shake the world when we invade the new world. Luffy said with an ambitious smile. Quickly thousands of people shouted agreeing with the fleet captain. Many might have been there by force, but ended up joining the fleet wholeheartedly after seeing their strength increase and Luffy's charisma seemed to affect them with the promise of conquering the new world, and all of them wanted to participate in such a thing when they are on the winning side. After that, Yuta used the snails of Skypiea and began to sing for everyone on the island, as she had finally managed to get that technology and started to use it at banquets, winning thousands of fans with her songs. The night continued on that floating island while the world was unaware of the force emerging there hidden from everyone, and the main powers of the world would be shocked by this force as soon as it appeared in the world. Chapter 212, The Grand Wedding. Third Person POV. Skypiea, first half of Grand Line. Several more days were spent in Skypiea. Luffy was organizing all his plans and fleet to leave with his main crew from the kingdom. At this moment, he was in the doctor's laboratory, together with the doctor himself, and also with Chopper, looking at the doctor's research and the results of the last month. Chopper, as a specialist in drugs and genetics, ended up accepting Luffy's request to help improve the work that Shiki had been doing for years along with his crew, so he was working hard in this laboratory when he wasn't training with the crew. Luffy picked up the sheets of the reports and looked satisfied at the research. Even though he was not a scientist, he was still a smart man to read graphs and side effects. Everything was almost complete and they would start implementing the drugs in animals soon. Probably, in a few months, they would have the first results. It would be good training with the new modified species, which would help a lot in the post-war before invading the new world. Very well, you've done a good job, Doctor. And you too, Chopper. As expected of my doctor, Luffy smiled, touching his doctor's head. When Chopper heard this, he automatically twisted his body looking like he was using Kami, while dancing and saying, "You think you can buy me with this, you bastard?" but speaking in a cute tone. Luffy just smiled and let them continue working. Luffy then left through the door of Shiki's former main base and jumped into the air while all the soldiers were training around that island. He flew to Skypiea, since he had some more matters to attend to. Heading towards the City of Angels, he landed softly on one of its streets with his large wings, while the people there recognized and greeted him respectfully. Since many considered him a god, despite his denials, he couldn't do much about it. He continued walking until he reached a large house that was built recently, where Gonfall was monitoring the kingdom. Luffy entered calmly through the gate of the residence and the winged horse also greeted him in the courtyard. Gonfall came out of the door already feeling Luffy's presence approaching. "Hello, so you've come to me to sort out the last things, haven't you?" he asked respectfully. Luffy nodded. "Yes, we are leaving soon. Just need to make the final preparations to leave. I want to leave things with you, since you will continue to be responsible for this kingdom," he said. "Alright, let's go inside." So Luffy and Gonfall entered the house. The conversation was mostly about what they planned to do in the coming months. Luffy made it clear to the entire fleet that they should continue training and even giants would take care of most problems, should someone start to make them. "And about Enel?" Gonfall asked, a bit cautiously. "I've left him stranded on an island. I hope he gets stronger, but he won't be a problem for you. I will even keep him away from here, but he is useful to me, and I will continue making my decision. I can take care of him in any case, so I'm not worried," Luffy said. "I see. I will trust you, since you can take care of him," Gonfall said in the end. They discussed the last matters and left some papers with the plans. After saying goodbye to the man, Luffy left the house and went to look for a specific person. He didn't have a haki as powerful as Enel's to cover the whole island, so he had to search manually. Using his wings, he flew to the sky of the City of Angels and went to the upper yard, looking for this specific person. It's not because he didn't have Enel's observation haki that he couldn't sense some people kilometers away. In a short time, after feeling some members of his crew training in various locations and hearing the explosions, while some were quite flashy as they transformed into their final form of their icon to fight each other, Luffy felt a person training in a corner, covered by rocks. Luffy then approached the site quietly. But he surprised two princesses who were with the person he wanted to look for while she was reading a book. "Luffy-sama." Shirahoshi greeted him with her usual joy. "Luffy." Vivi also smiled. Sharky, Megalo, who was also there, greeted. "Hello, girls and Megalo, how's everything?" Luffy greeted everyone, and they all responded. Luffy then looked at Robin, who closed her book and looked at him. "Did you come looking for me?" she said with a small smile. "Yes, it's time for us to go to that place," he said calmly. The place he wanted to take Robin to was the Golden Bell. Robin had already heard from Luffy about the Poneglyph. But she wanted to go with him, even if it would take a few months to see something so close to her. After all, she was used to seeing the stones with him, making her even consider him as a good luck charm. Knowing this, Luffy invited her in the morning to go to the place, so the moment had come. "Luffy, I can't fly, not like you," she commented, with a shy smile. Luffy nodded and picked her up by the waist as he took off into the air after saying goodbye to the princesses. They flew quickly to what Luffy calls the Great Beanstalk above Skypiea. Quickly landing in front of the giant Golden Bell, where, besides the large gold structure, there was also the Poneglyph with the location of Poseidon, which ironically was present in Skypiea at that moment. They went in front of the gold Poneglyph next to it, while Luffy began to look surprised as Robin talked about the name of Gold Roger having inscribed his own words in the ancient language, wondering if he also knew it. Did he know the ancient language? She murmured. No. He has something special, called the Voice of All Things. It's an ability even rarer than the Conqueror's Haki. He commented. How do you know about this? Forget it. Robin commented, already knowing that Luffy had knowledge that no one else had, but she respected him. I also possess this ability. It can hear about anything. It seems like everything in this world has its own memory. I can see the life of a stone in the middle of the road or even hear the sound of sea kings talking. It's quite strange and complex, and I haven't even awakened this ability. Luffy commented. Robin looked surprised after Luffy said that, but nodded in silence at the end, already knowing that this man was incredible. Luffy looked at the ancient words and ended up looking at Robin, asking, "Robin, can you teach me the ancient language?" Luffy asked curiously, wanting to learn as well. After all, he would have plenty of time later, after the war, and could improve his knowledge even more. Robin looked stunned but had a bright smile on her face. "Of course," she said with the same smile, since she could carry that burden, which is dangerous, with a man she loved. After Luffy and Robin decided to leave, Luffy didn't take the bell with him, he left it there. But before that, he went up to the bell and punched it so hard that it immediately recoiled to the opposite side, striking the first hole. And then, against gravity, striking the second, third, fourth. All of Skypiea heard the golden bell. Even the people of the Blue Sea could hear it. In Jaya, a man who lived in isolation, even with all the devastation that the island had now, looked up in surprise hearing that bell, wondering if he wasn't dreaming about it. After that, Luffy returned to his crew. He had one more matter to resolve, which was a grand wedding that he had promised to many of his women. So he had to prepare for the wedding. The next day, a grand event happened in the Gold City itself, or what was left of it, in the upper yard. Luffy would marry all his current women in a unique event, since it was a requirement after they found out he had already married another woman while he was away. On the Black Pearl, the future wives were meeting in the same place after dressing for the occasion. "Finally, my husband is going to be my husband," Alvida murmured in a white dress, with satisfaction. "Nami, you look beautiful in that dress," Nojiko said in her blue dress matching her hair, while Nami was in the same style in an orange dress. "Thank you, you too. That dress matches almost as well as Vivi's," she commented, pointing to the Princess of Alabasta in a slightly more sky blue dress. "I have a better dress than you," a voice emerged amid the compliments, and it was Reiju, pointing at Lami. "What nonsense, that pink does not suit you at all," Lami replied, crossing her arms. "The girl in a black dress is speaking. You do know this is a wedding, right? You'll never be a wife because of that," Reiju declared with a grimace. "Why are you always fighting and competing?" Vivi complained from the side. "Kaya-ha-ha-ha," Makita laughed on the side, wearing a yellow dress, since she had also become one of Luffy's partners, thus she would marry him as well. Foo, can't you stop even at your own wedding?" Robin chuckled on the side, wearing a white dress like Alvida. "What a bunch of weirdos." Yuta murmured to the side, wearing a purple dress matching her eyes. "Hey, we should go," Yamato's voice was heard, and everyone looked at her, shouting, "Why are you dressed like that?" all exclaimed, since Yamato was still wearing her Wano attire without any decoration for the wedding. "I like this outfit, so I'll wear it," she declared with determination, leaving all the women just sighing. "Let's go, we should already be there." Nojiko spoke, then, all 10 women went to the venue, which ended up being an event that gathered the entire population of Skypiea, as it was a grand wedding. Gonfall would be the person officiating the ceremony. The event then started with the entry of the brides in different dresses, and all the women approached Luffy standing while Beeple once again was Luffy's best man. "They are so beautiful," Shirahoshi said in a corner watching the women approaching Luffy with a sparkle in her eye. "You wanted to be there too, didn't you?" Kuina asked beside her. "I first have to ask Daddy's permission before marrying Luffy-sama," Shirahoshi commented. As the women arrived on stage, they ended up forming a line and one by one joined Luffy for Gonfall to continue the wedding vows. One by one all went through the ritual, sealing a kiss with their captain. "I declare, husband and wives." Gonfall finished as soon as they were all done, and they proceeded to a platform where Beeple levitated them to a deserted floating archipelago island for them to spend the next days on a long honeymoon in a house that Luffy had built with the system. Chapter 213 Mugiwaras are back. Third-person POV. Skypiea, first half of Grand Line. Luffy stayed with his women on honeymoon for 3 days, with Baby 5 joining them. Luffy didn't marry her because she wasn't yet an official member, despite her seeming quite in love with him, even though sometimes she tried to kill him. But his reinforced body felt nothing from her attempts. Now, with everything ready, all the crew members waiting for him, he was finally ready to get back to handling the main crew. Adjusting his cloak, placing Ace on his waist and his pistol, a new one he had recently bought for 1 billion berries on the other, fixing his hat, and looking into the mirror in his cabin satisfied, he turned his attention to the door of this place. His bed was much larger than it used to be, but it was empty at this moment, since everyone was waiting outside. Luffy left his cabin and went to the ship's deck through the main hallway and finally emerged outside. He saw everyone waiting for him, but he kept walking, passing by Yamato, Shirahoshi, Megalo, Zoro, Kuina, Lamy, Bippo, Nami, Usopp, Reiju, Chachu, Hugo, Nojiko, Hachi, Alvida, Vivi, Laboon, Karu, Robin, Chopper, Yuta, and Baby 5, who now completed his main crew. Maybe I can get 2 or more members on this trip, Luffy thought with satisfaction. He continued walking until he found his spot, the prow of the ship. He landed on Ifrit's head and looked over his entire crew waiting for him to speak. Luffy had a small satisfied smile on his face. We've been off the sea for a few months, it's time for us to return to the sea below us and show our power to the world, he said, and many smiled, looking forward to showing their new strength to the world. He had all those official crew members before arriving at Skypiea and added 3 more members, but Enel was in his personal training on an island of Calm Belt. He turned his attention to the city and the crowd that was looking at the ship. Currently Black Pearl was in the port of the City of Angels while everyone came to bid them farewell. They would remain here training and doing some important things, while the main crew would participate in the conquest of the first half of the Grand Line. There were some things that some people here needed to do. Some members of the old Baroque works would return to Alabasta and reunite the organization that Crocodile commanded, with Luffy aiming to turn it into an information network in this sea and protect the kingdoms he declared as his territory. All the others would remain here and stay with the research and becoming stronger. He then decided to finalize his stay in this kingdom. Looking at Usopp and Hachi, let's depart, raise the anchor and steer the ship out of this kingdom, he declared. Then, Usopp quickly raised the anchor effortlessly with his current strength, while Hachi headed to the helm. Black Pearl finally began to move away from the Island of Angels and headed towards the Cloud Sea. While everyone shouted and said goodbye, Black Pearl headed for the Gate of Heaven. It didn't take long to pass through the welcome structure and reach the borders of the divided territory. As they passed through the entire archipelago of floating islands, where Bippo had permanently left in this place until they returned. The ship soon reached the limit of the Cloud Sea and encountered the 10,000-meter drop, turning sharply as if it were a waterfall towards gravity, but it didn't immediately fall, as Bippo had already used his power on Black Pearl. The ship began to float. This is amazing, Shirahoshi commented. Some looked at her as if she couldn't already fly, wondering why she would be so surprised by the ship flying. Luffy was a traditional pirate by nature, so he wanted to travel by water instead of by air on his journey, so the ship continued descending until it hit the seawater and finally stabilized, continuing on its way with the wind. Luffy laughed with joy. We're finally back, he shouted from the prow of the ship. Soon, the routine from months ago returned again, while each member went back to their daily activities. When they were not training on that ship, although some continued to train in the training room to improve their skills using sea stone handcuffs, since they did not want to destroy the ship. Luffy also made himself comfortable while wearing shorts and sunbathing while drinking a juice that Reiju brought him, saying that she was being a better wife than the emo woman. Nami approached him. Luffy, where should we go now? She asked. Let's head straight to Water 7. Set the log pose on the helm and let Hachi steer the ship there, Luffy ordered, and his navigator nodded, doing so. The ship moved forward. In the late afternoon, Luffy left the crew and went down to the ship's prison, where there were 2 beings chained in that place. How are you feeling? He commented, looking at Doflamingo and Page-on in each cell. I know it's been a tough month for you, but I'm sure you'll soon be free again. Luffy crossed his arms. When Luffy had captured Doflamingo, he expected Lamy to try to kill him and he would gladly give that to his wife, even if it enraged Kaido, but Luffy already had his daughter, so he was not worried about the Yonkou. However, when Lamy heard this, she was surprised, but declined as soon as Luffy spoke, because she herself wanted to end him in another way, not like this, as it would be too easy. Seeing that he couldn't do much against him, then he decided to leave it to negotiate his life and make some money, since his was currently running out after spending so much. Mugiwara. Doflamingo growled at Luffy. Hey, don't be so angry. I'm sure the world government will soon get in touch so we can make a trade, Luffy commented, waiting for that. As he returned to page on, "Hey, how about you work for me? You seem competent, despite being quite wild." Luffy commented, and Page on did not respond. After seeing the prisoners, he returned to his captain's cabin, where his documents and a large map of his journey drawn by Nami were. He sat in his armchair and began to quickly mark on a board his current strength. Captain, Luffy. Vice Captain, Yamato. Swordsman, Zoro, Kuina. Tankers, Alvida, Hugo. Cooks, Reiju, Hachi. Doctors, Lamy, Chopper. Helmsman. Secretary, Vivi. Sharpshooters, Usopp. Maid, Baby 5. Ship guard, Chaochu. Mascots, Laboon, Karu, and Megalo. Marine support, Shirahoshi. Musicians, Yuta. Archaeologists, Robin. Economist, Beppo. Informant, Nojiko. Navigator, Nami. Engineers, Enel. Luffy looked at the list. He just didn't have a member for one official role, which was the helmsman, but he believed that Jinbei would become his official member for this role. He still had Frankie, another engineer, and Brook, another musician, to recruit on this journey, and he was confident he could do it. Frankie would be the most troublesome to convince, but Luffy would give him an atom tree to make the sunny go. Yes, Luffy planned to build the ship anyway. It wouldn't be the official one, but still, it would be in addition to the collection of ships he had been accumulating in his vault. He could have spent another 1 billion to take Black Pearl to the next level, but it would be as big as Moby Dick, and Luffy didn't want it to be that size at the moment. Its current state was in the best shape for the group. Looking back at all the members, Luffy was excited to face the forces of this sea. He didn't know what Kaido was doing, since he hadn't shown up even with those two as prisoners, but surely there were some assassins following him. However, he managed to divert their attention when he went to see Yuta, so he would meet them soon. Now, his goal was Water 7 and to hunt down CP9 and recruit Frankie. Why would he hunt CP9? Simple, he planned to increase the bargaining against the government, getting more milk from the cow. Luffy was immersed in his thoughts when he felt a presence at the door. "Baby 5, what are you doing there? Come in," he ordered, and his official maid entered with a shy tone. "Do you need me, Captain?" she said with a mix of shyness and hope. "Of course, come here," Luffy commented with a smile. She approached, still shy, but her expression changed as her hand turned into a weapon. "Then die." And Luffy just looked at her, pointing the barrel at him, shooting point blank. "I think you do this on purpose, don't you?" Luffy commented as the bullet fell from his forehead without hurting him and continued looking at the woman. "I don't know what the captain is talking about. But your maid is behaving so badly. I think she must be punished," she murmured timidly while lifting her skirt to show her bottom. Luffy sighed. He still couldn't get used to this masochistic woman, but Luffy shrugged as he would punish her and have his way with her at that moment. Chapter 214, Jack Again / Green Bull. Third person POV. Somewhere on sea, first half of Grand Line. The sea was calm, while a ship stood still upon it at this moment, its flag waving with the wind, and its flag with a wild and powerful symbol made anyone immediately flee. After all, these were the Beast Pirates. However, even carrying that name, the atmosphere on the ship didn't seem very good. They are doing basic things but still without much willingness as they sail. Jack was sitting in a chair on the deck. He has been waiting for reinforcements for more than a month. But he had achieved nothing, and Queen, the only one who had spoken to him during this time, said that Kaido went to an unknown place in King after him to stop him and return, but it has been a month and he could not take his group of men to the first half of the Grand Line, not while Kaido and King do not return, which was worrying, since Kaido had taken the 6-month supply stock with him from looting. "Mr. Jack." A man dressed in the Beast's uniforms approached cautiously. "What is it?" Jack spoke in a bad mood, making the man afraid. "A ship," he began, but Jack was impatient. "We've sunk hundreds of them in the last month, destroy that one too," Jack ordered angrily. "But..." The man seemed to want to say more. "What is it?" Jack looked at him. "The ship's flag, it's the Straw Hats." The man finally said, and Jack quickly stood up. Is it them? Are they here? He went to the side of the ship and saw the speck in the sea approaching. This is my chance. I will have my revenge on you. Straw Hat. Jack growled as soon as he saw the ship's flag with a magnifying glass grabbed by his men. On the Black Pearl, another person was looking at Jack's ship with a magnifying glass. He saw the ship and frowned before turning his attention back to the deck of the ship, where Luffy was sunbathing with his wives and while Chopper and the other animals were running around chasing each other. "I Luffy!" Usopp shouted, making Luffy move his sunglasses and look at his marksman. "There's a ship in our way. And it's the Beast Pirates," he said. "My father?" Yamato asked beside him while wearing a bikini. "It must be Jack, I'm surprised he's still here." Luffy comments and looks back at Usopp. "Can you take them down?" Luffy asks. "Me? But isn't Jack one of Kaido's calamities?" Usopp gets scared for a moment. "Come on, Usopp, you're a brave warrior of the sea. You must show your power." Luffy encourages him and Usopp seemed to have gained courage after that. "Yes. I am a brave warrior of the sea," he said and went to his cabin, coming out of it with a huge weapon that Luffy gave the design for him to create. "You-oh-oh-oh-oh!" Chopper shouted excitedly seeing Usopp pulling out the weapon. Soon many of the crew came to see the marksman placing the weapon on the edge of the Black Pearl as he prepared to launch a shot at the ship on the other side. He positioned the weapon while having a great aim. Jack on the other side looked at a small reflection on the ship with the sunlight being reflected on Usopp's sight, wondering what that was. Usopp prepared to shoot, but instead of pulling the trigger, wings grew on his back, releasing the power of Bahamut. A bright blue energy began to circle the weapon, and it was charging little by little as everyone on the Black Pearl's crew stopped what they were doing to watch Usopp preparing his shot. Jack on the other side felt that something bad was going to happen, frowning, wondering what that feeling was. "Let's show the power of a brave warrior of the sea," Usopp said and pulled the trigger. With an explosion that even made him recoil a few meters, his light shot flew to the ship 5 kilometers away. The shot traveled as fast as a Kizaru attack. Jack only saw the light coming and reached his ship quickly. As soon as it hit the wood of the ship, it immediately exploded. Boom! The explosion grew, disintegrating all the water around while steam rose. Jack and his ship were totally covered by the explosion. "Hey, didn't you overdo it?" Kuina said from the side. Usopp scratched his head, looking at the explosion in the distance, large enough to destroy an entire city. "Very good, Usopp, you just threw a calamity into the air," Luffy said, clapping. He knew that shot couldn't destroy Jack, but surely the mammoth was now sinking into the sea. How beautiful! Shirahoshi also clapped for the explosion. "Well, now I'm going back to my things," Luffy said, reading a book as he returned to sit in his chair. His routine was peaceful in the following days. He didn't demand any training from the crew at that time because they were quite prepared for the big enemies, and they could simply enjoy the journey without worrying about it for the time being. Luffy ended up liking this style. He spent the entire night with his women, which demanded a lot from him, even using the Moa Moa Nomi to make all the women quite satisfied and sleep peacefully. He would wake up in the morning and have some sword fighting training with Zoro and Kuina, then go to Ranger for something to eat and spend the morning reading books. Now, during the afternoon, he would enter the ship and enter a room where a person was waiting for him while reading a book seated. "You finally arrived," she said with a seductive tone. "Of course, I'm here, Professor." Luffy smiled, looking at Robin. She began to teach reading the poneglyphs. Robin is always quite reserved, but when alone, she always lets loose with him. "You can't wear such a short skirt to teach someone," Luffy commented, looking at the woman's clothes. "Didn't you like it?" she teased once again. "Of course, I liked it, but seeing you like this, my desire is to fuck you before we start anything," he commented, not that he thought it bad his woman trying to seduce him while they are alone. She walked up to him, leaving her chair, and threw him into another while mounting Luffy. "We can have a fuck before we start, you know we hardly have time alone, so let's enjoy it," she commented as she began to take off her cloak and lift her skirt, showing she was without panties. Luffy was already quite accustomed to having sex all over the ship. All the women who managed to get some free time with him seemed obsessed with having sex, and Luffy, as a good husband, didn't deny it, using any part of the ship, from Nami's map room, Nojiko's library, Rage's kitchen, Lami's infirmary, the training room, the vault, the storage, the sauna, and even his own cabin. Luffy let it happen and had sex with Robin for a while in that room. Then both were studying the ancient language with the copies taken from the poneglyphs they already had, with Robin giving an explanation. Luffy was learning quickly everything he could about the lost language, using his Moa Moa no Mi. In a few days, he was achieving a result of months. After studying and training a bit more in the afternoon, Luffy completed the night with a big banquet among them. This was the routine without many changes, while the ship continued to sail. However, one day, Usopp again alerted about another ship approaching. "What's this?" he said curiously. "What's up?" Hugo approached. "There's a man peddling a strange boat coming towards our direction," he commented, and Luffy, curious, picked up a magnifying glass and saw the man, quite surprised by who was approaching. "It seems that before he didn't join the Navy, he was some kind of mercenary?" Luffy murmured, looking at the man, since this was one of the future Navy admirals, and it seemed he was hunting them, probably to rescue Doflamingo, who was imprisoned on the ship. Luffy wasn't wrong. The man received a proposal of 2 billion to hunt Monkey D. Luffy and his crew, rescuing Joker and Page on. Attracted by the money as a mercenary that he is, this man quickly set out to sea. He was one of the greatest hunters of the underworld, so his employer entrusted him with Doflamingo's Vivre card, and he followed it. However, this turned out to be one of his major problems. The Vivre card, which pointed towards the calm belt that lies between the Grand Line and the East Blue, shifted southwards, and he followed it to the calm belt between the Grand Line and the South Blue, having to face various sea kings of those waters. And at the moment he saw the Vivre card indicating he was close, a huge storm erupted. Remember the storm that Luffy and Yuta caught, so he ended up losing his ship and was left with only a boat that he had to pedal to move on the sea. This made him spend weeks until he could get out of the calm belt with so many sea kings attacking him. He finally emerged in the Grand Line frustrated and still did not give up, but today he finally managed to find his target. The man who will one day be known as Aramaki, the Ryakugyu. In other words, the admiral known as the Green Bull was now pedaling at full steam towards the Black Pearl, wanting to finalize his hunting mission. Chapter 215, Green Bull 01. Third-person POV. Somewhere on sea, first half of Grand Line. Ryakugyu continued pedaling towards the ship, now having his target in sight. Luffy glanced at him for a moment and then returned to his crew. "Do you know him, Luffy?" Yamato approached. "A bit. This man is on the level of a Navy admiral," he said. "What? An admiral? Should we run away? He seems to be hunting us." Karoo. Hearing Luffy's words, some crew members panicked, but the captain just shrugged it off. "It would really be hard to deal with him alone, even with our training." Luffy acknowledged the power of the forest Logia and how troublesome it is. "But, look around us, who in the world could face us alone?" he said with a smile. "This is a good test for all of us. I don't like fighting together against just one opponent, but since he came to our ship, let's show him our combined power," Luffy declared, making everyone nod in agreement. Ryakugyu noticed a movement on the ship and saw a man with a long nose holding a weapon, pointing at him. "Ei. This looks dangerous," he murmured, and then couldn't even react when Usopp launched another shot of light in his direction. Boom! The explosion once again disintegrated the water, but unlike Jack, Ryakugyu could fly, appearing above the explosion with a flower spinning on his back, allowing him to glide in the air. "He can fly with a giant flower?" Usopp murmured after taking his weapon off aim. Luffy next to him slapped his back. "Why don't you fight him?" he asked. "Me?" Usopp seemed unsure. "Don't be like that, show your training power." "You made Jack, a calamity, sink into the sea, you can freely show your power against him. Besides, you're not alone," he said, wanting to see the extent of his sniper's power, one of the few Luffy had yet to see in full action. Usopp nodded, and still with the wings on his back from the attack he had made, he flew up, leaving the Black Pearl and meeting the man in the air. "Hey, Luffy. Will he be okay?" Nami approached. "Usopp is very strong now, he can take care of himself," Luffy spoke and continued, "I don't think Usopp can beat him, but he will surely put on a good show." Luffy smiled. In the air, Raikkojo looked, narrowing his eyes behind his glasses at the long-nosed man flying with wings towards him. "I don't remember seeing this power in the report, so it must be a recent power," he murmured. Raising his hand, his fingers began to transform into spikes, launching them at Usopp, who quickly saw the movement and opened his wings, generating balls of light and launching them at the man in the sky. The spikes and streaks of light collided, but Usopp had the advantage, as in addition to disintegrating with the streaks of light, the shots continued flying towards Raikkojo. Without much time to react, since he didn't have much mobility in the air, they collided with his body. Boom, asterisk. Boom, asterisk. Boom, asterisk. Boom, asterisk. A bunch of explosions occurred on that side, and Usopp kept an eye on the man, feeling with his observation haki that his attack didn't even affect the Logia. Raikkojo appeared after the smoke dissipated, appearing with parts of his body missing but regrowing like a kind of growing plant. "What ability is this?" Vivi asked Luffy on the Black Pearl. "This is the Mori Mori no Mi, the forest fruit. Raikkojo was the forest man with this Logia," Luffy spoke. "A forest Logia, his abilities are so versatile that he can even create a forest in Alabasta," Robin added. "A forest in Alabasta," Vivi murmured, as that would be quite useful for the citizens. "Well, anyway, let's see how Usopp will deal with him," Luffy comments and sees Usopp pulling his pistols from his waist. Using dual pistols, Usopp's body begins to glow and he disappears the next moment, appearing above the man, where Usopp kicks him, making him fly while still recovering. With him falling, Usopp points the pistols and starts firing shots of light. Boom, asterisk. Boom, asterisk. Another part of Raikkojo's body is destroyed, as he falls to the ground. "He really got him good," Kuina comments as she watches Raikkojo's body being destroyed, only for a sprout to emerge from the light, falling towards the sea before hitting the ground. Roots began to emerge from it, spreading across the sea at that moment and expanding in all directions. "Can he create roots in the sea?" Nojiko was surprised. "It seems quite similar to Kuzan," Luffy adds, and Robin nods in agreement. The roots continued to expand across the water's surface, and plants and trees began to emerge from them, turning the area into a forest, even hiding the sea beneath it all. The Black Pearl shuddered. "This guy, he's targeting us too," Hugo commented, looking around as he felt the roots covering the ship's hull and spreading upwards. "Ah!" Chopper cried out as he saw a root emerging and chasing after him, but Luffy grabbed it before it could reach Chopper and quickly burned it with his purple flames. "Chaochu, use your ice and freeze the sea around the ship, to prevent these roots from emerging so easily," Luffy ordered, and Chaochu transformed into Cerberus, biting the emerging roots before one of its heads opened its mouth and produced a white beam into the sea, immediately freezing it. As soon as he saw the frozen sea, Luffy nodded in satisfaction, knowing he wouldn't have to worry about an attack from below, but the roots continued to expand until reaching the ice. That's when a powerful attack came from the sky, halting the advance of the Mori Mori no Mi. Usopp began to bombard the roots as they grew. A tree emerged with a cut in the middle of the rising forest. "That's huge!" Hachi exclaimed upon seeing it. "Wow!" Shirahoshi seemed fascinated. "That's scary!" Usopp shouted from above, finding the huge face on the tree quite bizarre while shooting at it with a grimace. Suddenly, the face on the tree looked at him, causing him to lose courage with those eyes. "Usopp, you can do better than that!" Luffy shouted from the ship, finding his crewmate cowering over little when he hadn't even used all his power. "Luffy's right, I'll face him!" Usopp shouted with determination. The tree looked at him, ignoring the Black Pearl, since Raikkojo wanted to eliminate this troublesome individual and capture the Straw Hats. From the forest, giant hands began to grow in the form of fists and were launched at Usopp, who aimed his pistols at the attack. Boom asterisk. Boom asterisk. Boom asterisk. Boom asterisk. Boom asterisk. Boom asterisk. Ryakuju had evolved his fruit so much that fire, being the greatest weakness of the forest, ended up making it resistant to this type of element. The same could be said of light, as the wooden spikes came out of the explosion with some parts missing and heading for Usopp in the air, who had to use his agility to dodge the attacks. Seeing no other choice, Usopp then dashed forward, going towards Ryakuju transformed into that huge tree. He faced the fists, but Usopp had Geppo, his wings, and the element of light for movement, so he descended zigzagging through the air while dodging the fists and getting close to his enemy. As soon as he was in front of the tree, Usopp transformed with a burst of light into Bahamut. His shadow covered the tree, and he clamped his claws onto the trunks while biting a stunned Ryakuju for seeing this giant dragon taking him down hard. For the crew, it was an incredible scene as the dragon grabbed the huge tree with its giant body and bit its trunk. "Get out of here!" Ryakuju said while creating fists to push Usopp away. But the dragon didn't let go and continued biting his trunk, with a light beginning to emerge in its mouth. "You think that will work against me?" Ryakuju spoke, still surprised that this shooter was a mythical Zoan of a dragon he had never heard of. Usopp didn't stop, unleashing his power while biting the huge tree. Boom asterisk. His power ran like a huge beam of light, disintegrating everything in its path, causing half of the tree to disappear along with the forest behind it. "How strong!" Yuta exclaimed on the deck, covering her eyes as the energy light traveled and even covered the sunlight. After a while, with the enormous sound, things began to calm down as a part of the sea was left without water, and with the force of gravity, the sides began to flood the middle part. Bahamut was still caught in the tree, however. A huge tree hand with haki hit him, sending him flying back, feeling the impact of the punch. Ryakuju had returned again while the tree returned to normal, now with him using haki. "That hurt!" Usopp exclaimed in his dragon form as he spat out blood. He opened his wings, and white light balls appeared again. He was going to fight again. Releasing his energy, he shot towards the tree, while Ryakuju didn't stay behind, building trees with fists to attack as well. The light and the trees collided with each other, generating numerous explosions in that area, but Usopp was at a disadvantage and was thrown back. However, he flew up, launching energy directly at Ryakuju. Boom asterisk. Boom asterisk. Boom asterisk. Luffy. Usopp could only use armament haki, something he is not yet proficient in. Zoro commented. "It's true, but we should let Usopp fight this fight, it will be good training for him," he said, looking at the fight. The fight between the forest and the dragon continued as Usopp and Ryakuju kept up a tremendous clash in this area of the sea. Attacks of light and trees continued for the next hour. However, Usopp began to be at a disadvantage, receiving many hits from Ryakuju with haki. In the end, Usopp lost his transformation and fell unconscious into the forest. Ryakuju did not stop there. Wanting to suck Usopp's energy, he used his roots to advance against the fainted shooter, but could not catch him. After all, he had disappeared from the place, with Lami using room and swapping him to bring Usopp back to the ship. It was a beautiful fight. Luffy spoke satisfied and looked at Lami. "Send us there," he said, and she raised her finger. Ryakuju, a bit frustrated for losing his prey, saw new opponents arriving at that moment. Luffy, Yamato, Reiju, Nami, Shirahoshi, Zoro, Kuina, and Hugo appeared in the middle of the forest created by Ryakuju. Luffy took his first step. "Let's do this, let's see who defeats in using their transformation." Luffy smiled excitedly, as his arms turned to haki and flames began to emerge around him. The same could be said of his companions, each releasing their element, ready to fight against the giant tree that scowled at them as prey. Chapter 216, Green Bull 02. Third-person POV. Somewhere on sea, first half of Grand Line. Luffy was looking at Ryakuju with a solemn gaze, while the tree itself did not like how all those pirates were looking at it, as if they were competing among themselves for who would deliver the final blow. "It's a beautiful tree, it will be satisfying to cut it down," Zoro commented, drawing his katanas from their sheaths. "This guy has a funny face," Yamato murmured, looking strangely. "He's big, but seems so easy to beat," Hugo commented with crossed arms. It's a shame that my rival isn't here, I could beat her in this competition. Reiju commented with a cigarette in her mouth. What beautiful flowers, the forest is so vast. Shirahoshi ignored the tree and started to observe the effect of the Mori Mori no Mi. Luffy remained silent. Kuina also made no comment. Hey, you should be paying attention to our enemy. Nami said. Yes, Nami-sama. Shirahoshi spoke, now looking at the tree. You all seem very calm. The tree spoke for the first time, observing them. Because we are calm, you spinach. Zoro replied, placing his last weapon in his mouth. Then try to get rid of this. Ryakujiu and countless roots grew under the crew members' feet, but all disappeared at that moment, escaping the reach of the forest and appearing in the sky. Hey, Zoro initiated the attack. Kuina murmured, as Zoro was already in front of the tree with his swords. Seeing this, Ryakujiu launched an attack while using Haki to defend and attack the swordsman. The swords and a fist with Bakery and Haki clashed against each other, creating an explosion of red lightning. You might have beaten Usopp, but that's because he's not a specialist in armament Haki. Zoro commented and forced his swords against the fist, cutting it. What? Your Haki beat mine? Ryakujiu wasn't fighting seriously yet, but was surprised by this development. You should be paying attention to your surroundings. A voice emerged from beside the tree. Ryakujiu looked to the side and saw Kaido's daughter with her weapon, launching it against him. His face immediately flew back with the force of Yamato's Haki. That hurt. He murmured as he fell. New trees began to grow from the ground and flew towards Yamato, who began to dodge and punch, but could no longer get close to him. Zoro on the other side began to cut down the trees. This isn't good. Ryakujiu commented and started to press the pirates even more, with the forest still growing. Suddenly, numerous attacks, ice, red fire, purple fire, wind, water, and stones, began to bombard the forest. Ryakujiu was surprised as his forest began to be reduced by the attacks. Are they overdoing it? Vivi asked from the boat, seeing everything being bombarded. In the sky, Luffy launched his flames, Reiju the Phoenix flames kicking with fire cuts. Shirahoshi created a water ball with her hands and threw them, turning into water dragons. Nami created winds with her hands, Hugo created giant stones and launched them with his fists, and Kuina sliced the air, sending cold energy. The forest turned into a series of elemental explosions, while below, Yamato ran through the explosions heading towards Ryakujiu to launch another attack, and Zoro sent cuts eliminating all the fist trees. Ryakujiu was really under pressure. When he ended up losing his posture, and the swordsman took advantage of his open side and launched a cut. The tree was cut in half, but Ryakujiu managed to escape, while another tree emerged further away. However, a line of blood appeared on his face. That's it. Ryakujiu seemed quite frustrated, so much so that he didn't even notice the pink-haired woman using Jeppo and approaching while her feet filled with flames with a spin and hitting another side of the tree's cheek. The tree felt the Haki and flames on Reiju's feet and was thrown to the opposite side, while it flew, breaking everything in the forest. I will kill you all. Ryakujiu exclaimed again, but his sound was muffled as soon as Nami flew with her Garuda wings in front of him and, using both hands, enveloped the forest within a hurricane. Ryakujiu tried to hold his forest against that wind. A heavy man landed in front of him in the midst of the woods. Hugo propelled himself even with that wind and jumped on Ryakujiu, closing his hand with Haki and punching his chin before the tree could react much. Ryakujiu immediately flew into the sky with the force of Hugo along with Nami's wind. He finally found himself outside of the hurricane while his face was already bleeding. Shirahoshi appeared at that moment in front of him. Tree-sama, I will fight against you, Shirahoshi spoke, somewhat shyly, and with a movement of her two hands, she created water using oxygen molecules in a huge water sphere to trap Ryakujiu inside. Kuina made her move, appearing beside Shirahoshi and using her sword cut, the water ball turned into spiky ice. It looks like it's my turn. Luffy was even further above everyone. He raised his fist behind, and everyone feeling this, began to move away. Even Yamato, Hugo, Zoro, and Nami in the forest started to retreat. The flames rocks began to grow through Luffy's fist and expanded until it became a massive flame, running like a vortex, until Luffy flew towards the ice sphere with his fist with those flames and punched it. The ice sphere caught fire and flew downwards like a purple meteor, colliding with the forest above the sea. What happened after it fell was an endless explosion of Luffy's flames, which, like a meteor, began to run everything around. The forest was entirely covered by the flames and disintegrating everything. Boom! Asterisk. The explosion stopped only 30 seconds later while the smoke and steam from the sea rose covering everything in it. Damn, Captain, did you win? Zoro murmured. You know I didn't, Zoro. Luffy commented before feeling something. The sea appeared full of debris from what was left of the forest scattered everywhere. While the water was returning to normal, a sprout emerged and spread again like the first time, and another forest emerged again with the central tree. Ryakuji finally emerged, but not as well as before. His face was toasted to charcoal, his nose was broken, faces cut, and a bit sunken from the previous attacks. It's quite a sight. He managed to become even uglier. Hugo murmured. Ha ha ha. He looks angry. Luffy smiled. Ryakuji couldn't exclaim in front of the beating he took, he could only growl and start attacking them again. His forest followed to the sky with fist trees and he tried to hit the group that began to dodge again and go in his direction. Again, the fight continued with Luffy and the others not combining attacks anymore, going into a direct confrontation against the forest creature. The crew on the Black Pearl continued to watch the show of elements that followed in the next 20 minutes. They're giving him a beating, Alvida said, looking at the fight. Growling. Karoo. Wolf. Sherry. Go Captain. Amazing. At least some seem the animals seem so happy. Nojiko laughed, seeing the animals with Beppo and Chopper cheering for Luffy and the others. In the end, the forest once again was destroyed and Ryakuji was even worse off. Why? Why am I losing so badly to a group of rookies? Ryakuji growled. He really could not do beyond trying to defend. One of his eyes was already closed while more blood dripped from his nose and mouth, suffering numerous attacks with haki. I think we should finish him, Luffy commented. Luffy-sama. Can I try something? Shirahoshi suddenly said. Sure. I guess you can. Luffy commented, wondering what you wanted to do. Seeing the forest emerging again, Shirahoshi stood in front of the group swimming through the air. She took a deep breath and looked at the tree with a much fiercer look than usual. Ryakuji immediately felt that something bad was going to happen. Shirahoshi then shouted. Come! She said, and a sound wave emerged from her. The sea immediately entered a tidal wave, leaving everyone surprised. What is this? Ryakuji asked, frowning. What's happening? Vivi asked worried while Chopper started to run away crying in fear. I don't know. Nojiko commented. What's happening? Robin also asked. This. Usopp finally woke up and looked around, moving to the side of the ship. It's like what happened in the East Blue, he exclaimed. She's using that. The crew members who had seen that scene before were surprised, and even Luffy looked on with a raised eyebrow as the entire horizon trembled after Shirahoshi made her call. Around the forest, a huge shadow began to emerge from the water, and before Ryakuji could react, the sea rose between the forest and began to cover it. What is this? Ryakuji was scared. We should get out of here, Luffy said, seeing that they would also be enveloped by the shadow. He used his increased speed and grabbed the mermaid by the waist with a cry of surprise, and started kicking everyone's but so they flew to the ship like projectiles while screaming. Luffy ended up leaving last with Shirahoshi. The shadow began to rise, and Luffy escaped before he and Shirahoshi were swallowed. A monster! Beppo shouted from the ship, seeing how it was insignificant compared to that. Everyone was also stunned, even those who wanted to scold Luffy for receiving his kick in their buttocks. In the end, a huge sea monster swallowed Ryakuji's forest without catching the Black Pearl. Luffy looked at the creature with the huge eye, making even Laboon, who was already large, seem small. The monster looked back, mainly at the mermaid who looked at it with curiosity. Thank you for coming. Now you can go back, Shirahoshi exclaimed, and Luffy frowned. After all, they almost got swallowed too. The Sea King seemed to listen to Shirahoshi, and the next moment, returned to the sea generating a huge wave, but without harming anyone else. Luffy returned to the deck, landing softly in the middle while everyone gathered. The ship was still rocking from the turbulent sea, but soon it was calming down. I won the competition, didn't I? Shirahoshi had a victorious smile, one that not even her friend Megalo could share, since this innocent mermaid had awakened her power that had swallowed at least 200 meters of forest along with a man who could be classified as a Navy admiral. I guess so. Luffy answered, letting her go, and looked at everyone. Reiju was scratching her butt while looking at him grumpily along with Kuina and Nami. Well, I guess we better continue our journey. It seems we won't be seeing Forest Man anytime soon, if he survives, that is. Luffy said awkwardly, and everyone went back to their journey to Water 7. Chapter 217, Water 701. Third Person POV. Water 7, First Half of Grand Line. In a location in the Grand Line, more than halfway across, a large structure stood in the sea. Water 7 was a unique place among all the seas. The city pulled water from the sea and threw it upwards like a colossal fountain. With the water falling back down, it quickly began to run through the city, passing through the streets as it made its way back to meet the sea. Despite having salt water running through its streets, the houses did not seem to be damaged by the salt in the air, made of materials that could resist the corrosion caused by constant exposure to salt and humidity. This is possible through the use of materials like corrosion-resistant fiber-reinforced concrete, stainless steel, and other special alloys. The structure was not only known for its iconic shape that stood out, but the true specialty of the place was its famous shipbuilding, as great ships left its docks, sailing the seven seas and being recognized all over the world. The shipyards of Water 7 were composed of various key facilities, each playing a vital role in ship construction. Among these structures were dry docks, specialized areas where ships were built or repaired, equipped with gates that could be closed to drain the water and make room for work on the ship's hulls below the waterline. Carpentry workshops. In these workshops, skilled craftsmen worked with wood to create the skeleton and cladding of the ships. They used resistant and treated woods to ensure the durability and resistance of the ships to adverse maritime conditions. Furnaces and foundries, spaces dedicated to molding and forging metals. Here, metals were transformed into essential parts for the structure of the ships, such as nails, chains, anchors, and reinforcement plates. Sail and rigging workshops, places where sails were carefully sewn and rigging was braided. The quality of the sails and ropes was fundamental for navigation, requiring resistant materials that could withstand strong winds and salt erosion. Naval design studios. Here, naval architects and engineers worked together on the design of the ships, ensuring that they were not only robust and safe but also efficient and aesthetically pleasing. Supply warehouses, large deposits where construction materials, tools, and supplies necessary for the construction and maintenance of the ships were stored. These warehouses ensured that all necessary materials were always available. Testing and launch areas, spaces along the coast where ships were launched into the sea for the first time. These areas allowed for buoyancy, stability, and performance tests before the ships were delivered to their owners. Administration offices, where all aspects of shipbuilding were coordinated, from hiring workers to project management and contact with clients. With all this, countless companies were in constant activity in the city. Among them, there was one that was more required, since its owner was the most important person in the city, besides already having a great fame for ending all outlaws that approach. At this place, a commotion was already happening. Give us the ship for free, otherwise, we will kill everyone. A pirate holding a gun, pointing at a blonde woman spoke. You should take it, that was our agreement. A blue-haired man spoke, narrowing his eyes. We paid half the value of the ship. But the other half will be for free. The pirate spoke, and his other 20 companions shouted, that's it. While pointing their firearms at the company. The name of this company was Galila Company, led by the mayor himself, the blue-haired man named Iceberg. The person who had the pistol pointed at her was Mia Khalifa, Iceberg's personal secretary, who looked at the gun with disdain, not caring about it. You better lower that, otherwise, I will make you regret being born. She spoke in a threatening tone. What did you say, woman? You have a gun pointed at you at this moment, so shut up. The pirate spoke angrily. Iceberg saw this and sighed. You really aren't going to pay, are you? He said calmly. Of course not. The pirate spoke, and in the next moment, Califa kicked him with a powerful kick, sending him a few meters away while the other pirates were surprised, but not for long, because at that moment, the carpenters who had just been watching while everyone pointed their guns at them began to act. The pirates didn't even have time as they were kicked by all of them, and Iceberg just watched the pirates being beaten up by everyone. What? The pirates were surprised to see their companions being beaten so easily while they began to point their guns. Bang, asterisk. Bang, asterisk. Bang, asterisk. Bang, asterisk. They kept shooting, but the members of the Galila Company were much more than simple builders, dodging bullets while punching and kicking all the pirates who tried this scam. It didn't take long for all the pirates to be on the ground, beaten, and knocked out. Take their weapons and tie them up. We should call the Navy. Let's auction their ship. Since they're not going to pay the other half, we'll get the money at the auction. Iceberg commented, and everyone nodded. Did you see that? The citizens shouted, watching the show from outside. Yes, they are unbeatable, as expected of the mayor. Another spoke. Iceberg-sama. Some women screamed. This was the atmosphere of the upper part of the city, but this could not summarize Water 7 as a whole, because on a beach at the lowest point of the city fountain, there was a dump with everything people threw away, mainly from ships that were destroyed in parts that had to be replaced and disposed of the old ones. Everything was accumulated on this side of the beach. Come on, we should throw this ugly ship's bow away, said a man who worked at a construction company on the lower side of the city. This thing, who makes something like this? The other murmured, looking at the sculpture that was the beak of a ship. You had to see the person who was the captain of this, he was crazy. The other murmured. I don't doubt it, who puts a person wearing a straw hat on the bow of the ship? It even looks like that pirate who was becoming famous. The other commented as they strained to move that bow. They had to throw it in the lower part of the city, on the beach, so they carried the pieces to the edge of the place and pushed for it to fall. Ha ha ha. This man had green hair and he seemed to be really a fan of that pirate, but he didn't have much experience at sea and almost sank, so he had to change the mast. He went crazy when we couldn't make a ship's bow like it and he had to use another from our stock. The man laughed, commenting on what happened. Whatever, let's keep pushing this thing. They nodded and threw that bow off the edge, and it fell straight onto the beach. As soon as they did that, they returned to their company to do their work, while the ship's bow fell among other debris. It didn't take long for a group of 3 men to see the ship's bow and look at it with interest from one side of the beach. This looks good. One man spoke with satisfaction. Frankie is going to love this. Another said while the last one just nodded. Then climbing onto the debris, they began to remove the ship's bow and loaded it onto a cart they brought. As soon as they fitted it into the cart, they began to take the ship's part to one side of the beach. They arrived at a corner of the beach where there was a house with neons, titled Frankie's house. After pushing the cart to the entrance, they entered and saw Frankie drinking his cola. Frankie, we found something you're going to be interested in, said the man. What would that be? Frankie, wearing only his swim trunks, said with interest. Come see, his subordinate spoke, and Frankie followed him outside. What is this? Frankie was shocked by the mast. Did you like it? Said a man waiting for a positive response. Of course not. You idiot. Frankie spoke loudly. This is nothing super perverted. He spoke with disappointment, still wondering who would use a ship's bow in that way, looking at the image of the man with a straw hat crookedly. Forget it, just leave it aside, it's not enough for the supership I'm planning to make, he said as the men grew disheartened, and Frankie went back inside to drink more cola, still hoping for an opportunity to create his perfect ship. Meanwhile, at the port, the workers continued their service, hammering the wood of the ships. The day was quite peaceful, with no one in this city expecting what would happen next because at sea, a small shadow appeared on the horizon. Why do I feel something strange when I look at that ship so far away? One of the working men murmured, seeing the small shadow. Hey, Lucas. What are you doing? Keep hammering that mast, another man warned. Wait, can you get the magnifying glass? I want to see who is coming to town, the same man said. Why do you want to see a new visitor? It doesn't matter who it is, if it's a pirate, Iceberg can deal with him with his men. But it's strange. I feel something wrong with that ship. Can you get the magnifying glass? The man insisted. What a pain, Lucas, he complained and went to the side of the ship under construction, picking up the magnifying glass on the table. Let me see what kind of ship is scaring Lucas so much. The man said disdainfully as he prepared to laugh at his friend while pointing the magnifying glass to the sea, expecting to see a random pirate. What is that? The distant shadow finally seemed clear to him, and he saw a large black ship coming at high speed to the city, its flag making him lose the sensation of standing on the ground, because that ship was not just any pirate, but a super crew with more than 2 billion for all their heads. Who wouldn't recognize that flag in this part of the sea and not pee in fear? Now that infamous pirate group causing chaos in the world was coming to Water 7. Hey, man, are you okay? Lucas, the simple worker, saw his friend paralyzed on the spot. The man looked at him with a pale face. We must warn the city. The Straw Hats are coming here, the man with the magnifying glass shouted, not only catching Lucas by surprise but all the workers on the ship, who immediately stopped what they were doing after hearing this. The Straw Hats? They are coming here? We must warn the city. Run. We must flee. Call the Marine, report our situation. That ship was just the beginning of the chaos that would follow in Water 7. At sea, the Black Pearl continued sailing towards the city with force. All the Straw Hats were looking at the structure somehow, some enchanted by the city, others with a neutral tone, some hoping to find a fight. Luffy was in the middle of all this just smiling. After all, he had more people to capture in the city. Since I'm here, let's start a call to begin negotiating. Luffy said, taking a Den Den Mushi out of his pocket and started dialing a specific number. Chapter 218, Water 702. Third Person POV. Water 7, First Half of Grand Line. The Black Pearl was getting ever closer to its next stop, slicing through the sea but without the rush Luffy usually imposed on the ship with his power. Luffy, the town seems to already know we're coming. Usopp said, using a technological lens on his eye after Luffy passed on a Vegapunk project for the sniper to create with the doctor in Skypiea. It was an item he had only finished a few days ago, and Usopp could now see things from afar much faster than by looking through a magnifying glass. Let them, we can't do anything about it, after all, we are a superpower in this sea, it's normal to arrive anywhere and scare people, Luffy commented. Are we scary now, Luffy-sama? Shirahoshi seemed horrified by this. We are pirates, I guess it's very normal, Vivi commented on the side. Anyway. Luffy commented and looked at Hugo. I need you to hunt someone down in that city, Luffy said and began to explain. He is not hard to find, he's at a bar as the owner, his hair is iconic with two looking like horns, he uses the power of the door fruit, so you have to be faster than him as soon as he sees you as a threat, got it? Luffy laid out the instructions on how to capture Bueno. That will be easy, Captain, Hugo spoke calmly. That's good, Luffy nodded and turned his attention to his pocket, where he took out his Den Den Mushi. Dialing a call, the phone started ringing. Catcha, asterisk. Hello, a familiar voice came from the other side. Hello, Grandpa, Luffy said calmly. Luffy. You damn brat. Where are you now? Garp demanded immediately. I'm missing you, can't a grandson call to ask how you are? Luffy asked. You think you can catch me with that again? The Den Den Mushi screamed, but there was a blush knowing Garp was holding back. Listen here, you irresponsible brat, how are my? Garp suddenly stopped. He was going to say great-grandchildren, but he hid that from someone in the middle of the call when he was about to pronounce those words, Luffy thought and gave a small smile. So you're in front of Sengoku, aren't you? That's good, I need to talk to him, Luffy said with Garp's silence. Give me that, Garp. Sengoku, not knowing why Garp did not continue, asked for the Den Den Mushi. Pirate Monkey D, Luffy. Sengoku shouted into the Den Den Mushi, while Luffy's crew was all listening to the conversation in silence. Hello, Sengoku. It's good to talk to you, Luffy smiled. You have a Shichibukai still in captivity. You better release him immediately, otherwise, I will send the entire force of the Navy to catch you. Sengoku immediately threatened him. Good that you brought that up, Luffy said, let's negotiate. After all, the capture of a Shichibukai is not your only concern. Luffy spoke mysteriously, making Sengoku have a bad feeling and growl. What do you mean? He asked cautiously. Give me a few minutes, Luffy spoke and turned to Hugo. Hugo, grab that man I asked for. You can stop at the harbor and enjoy the city, but we will leave in a few days. After all, we have a big negotiation with the Navy. Luffy spoke and quickly jumped into the air with Hugo following him and flew towards Water 7 immediately. They raced through the air, without the city realizing that Luffy was already arriving before his ship. By this time people were already spreading the shocking news of a 750 million pirate approaching the city. What are we going to do? Screamed a woman. Notify the mayor immediately. Should we call the Navy? People screamed in fear. Luffy was portrayed as a bloodthirsty demon that destroyed entire islands and thousands of people paid with their lives when that happened. Everyone in the city was seeking shelters, workers left the docks, citizens docked in houses closing all doors. Iceberg frowned as soon as he heard about the Straw Hat Pirates approaching the city, while his employees looked on, some with a look of fear. 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 Rob Lucci's pigeon said scared while he frowned. After all, even CP9 had to recognize Luffy's strength as depicted in the newspapers. Which of them could deal with a power that could devastate an island? Even the talented Rob Lucci had doubts. Rob Lucci exchanged glances with the other members as they pondered what to do. What should we do, Iceberg? Polly raised the question while everyone was silent. Let's stay calm. If we need to deal with them causing trouble, we should try to stop them, Iceberg said. You talk as if we're dealing with ordinary pirates. You know we can't face those pirates. Have you seen what they can turn into in the newspaper? Polly said in frustration. Even so, we can't let them destroy Water 7. Khalifa, contact the Navy immediately, Iceberg said. However, something happened. As they were discussing, a high-speed meteor fell from the sky, exploding the ground in front of the company, while everyone quickly went on alert. From the debris, Luffy emerged with his cape fluttering, flaunting his symbol while smiling at them with the Den Den Mushi still in his hand. He looked at Iceberg and the others as if they were his prey, while they all frowned at this pirate arriving in such a manner. Meanwhile, on the other side of the town, in a specific bar, Bueno was somewhat cautious. The city had plunged into chaos, and his customers quickly ran to their homes intending to hide. Some even went to the port to flee the place. He was wondering whether he should wait to see what happened or go after the others. This might compromise our disguise. I should stay here and wait for things to calm down. He decided in the end. After all, his mission had been carried out for years. He wouldn't like to lose it at this moment with uncertainty. However, at that moment, he heard the bar's doorbell opening and was surprised to see a large man entering. He was a member of CP9. He had to be aware of all possible information, and it wasn't hard to realize that this man was Hugo, one of the Straw Hat Pirates. Hugo looked at him and soon began to move towards the counter. Bueno just tried to appear calm as he watched him approaching. Hugo simply sat at the counter and looked at him. Get me your best loot, he said, and Bueno nodded, taking a bottle with a glass while pouring the alcohol into the glass and placing it on the table for Hugo to drink. Bueno could feel a pressure, indicating that something bad might happen, but he kept as calm as he could. Hugo picked up the glass and drank calmly. As soon as he finished, downing it all in one gulp, he looked at the bartender. You know, when my captain asked me to look for a man with cow-like hair and named Bueno, I didn't expect to find him in the first bar I entered. I guess I'm a lucky man, Hugo spoke with a small smile. Bueno just looked at him for a while, his demeanor appearing almost calm, but inside he was nervous. He stared at Hugo for a few seconds while the man gazed back with a smile. Bueno moved his finger, and a door materialized beside him. However, as he was about to touch the doorknob, a huge hand grabbed him by the neck, breaking the counter while Hugo appeared in front of him. Bueno immediately spat saliva and could no longer move as he felt his breathing stop with the grip on his neck. Sorry, but my order is to capture you. My captain asked for it, and I don't intend to disappoint him, Hugo commented calmly. Bueno, unable to do anything to escape the grip on his neck as his body was lifted, pointed his finger at Hugo's head, launching a shuriken. A small impact was heard, while Hugo just calmly looked at the finger. He didn't even need to use haki to defend himself because it didn't even tickle his skin hardened by the Titan. Hugo just smiled and raised another hand, slapping the man, making some teeth come out of his mouth as he fainted with a swollen and bleeding face after receiving just one slap. As soon as Hugo saw him passed out, he shrugged, took the bottle that had been served from the stock, and left drinking while dragging the man. His door created by the Akuma no Mi had already disappeared. As Hugo left the bar and jumped into the air to find his captain, Luffy was staring down all the men of the Galila company. Answer me, Monkey D. Luffy. What do you mean by that? Sengoku shouted into the Den Den Mushi, since Luffy had yet to respond to him. Simple, Sengoku. Luffy ignored the men in front of him, smiling at the Den Den Mushi. Because I'm in Water 7, you know what that means? He said calmly. Sengoku was silent for a while, until he spoke again. No, you can't be serious. Sengoku could not believe what he was hearing. How did Monkey D. Luffy have such precious information? I'm now capturing the entire CP9, so you better give me a fair value for the exchange. Luffy said, smiling. Silence took over the place. Iceberg was trying to understand what was happening, while the CP9 members themselves were quite alarmed now. Lucci immediately looked at the other CP9 members, knowing their cover was blown and they were about to act, but before they could, Luffy released his Conqueror's haki, which immediately flew out in all directions at that dock. Do you think I'll let you escape so easily? Luffy asked while seeing everyone feel the pressure of his king. Immediately everyone began to kneel, unable to handle his current strength. You are a little better, but still, you're weak. Is this the talent of the best talent to emerge in 500 years in Cypher Pole? Luffy said as yellow lightning covered the dock and his gaze went to Rob Lucci kneeling with one knee and trying to fight against the pressure. How do you know all this? How do you know us, pirate? Rob spoke with difficulty while growling, but he could not move. Luffy was extremely strong here. Iceberg, kneeling with the others who didn't know the true identity of the CP9 agents, were shocked to hear Rob Lucci speak for the first time, since he had always been mute and his pigeon spoke for him. Luffy didn't immediately respond and looked at all the people kneeling at the site, making sure none fainted yet. He looked amused especially at the agents of the feared CP9, appearing just weak while they couldn't even deal with his Conqueror's haki. Luffy originally couldn't even deal with them at this part of the journey. This shows the difference between my current crew and the original Straw Hat members when they landed in Water 7. Luffy couldn't help but compare his strength, satisfied. You hear that, Sengoku? I'm capturing all the members of the CP9, I'll be in touch soon so we can negotiate my terms. Luffy said. You bastard! Sengoku shouted angrily, but Luffy simply hung up the Den Den Mushi, cutting off his voice. He now had to deal with his new prisoners. Chapter 219, Water 703. Third Person POV. Water 7, First Half of Grand Line. GARP. Your grandson is causing trouble again. Sengoku growled at Garp, still in the room. Luffy. Garp growled silently, but couldn't say more. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to inform the government that your plan, made many years ago, placing agents in Water 7, has just been destroyed. You can imagine how furious they will be about this, can't you? Sengoku said, and Garp just nodded grumpily without even picking up his Den Den Mushi again. Sengoku then picks up another Den Den Mushi and starts calling the 5 elders, already knowing what would happen next. Meanwhile, in Water 7. Luffy was looking at all the Galila Company workers kneeling under his pressure. What are you doing? The man with blue hair finally spoke through gritted teeth. Luffy turned to him, who was standing next to a blonde woman dressed like a secretary. With an even wider smile, Luffy spoke. So you're Iceberg? How interesting to meet like this. Well, as you can see, you have 3 government agents infiltrated in your company. I'm just capturing them, since the government will have to pay a good price for their heads, Luffy said. What do you mean by that, pirate? A blond man growled, wanting to shut Luffy's mouth, not believing his words. Meanwhile, Rob Lucci, Kaku, and Califa were actually frowning at this moment. No matter what you think, Luffy ignored him and went to Rob Lucci using seastone handcuffs reinforced that could even limit the physical strength and haki of the prisoner. I know you can transform into a tiger, seems like a waste of your talent with a common Zoan fruit. Maybe the government is afraid of you, that's why they gave you such a fruit. Anyway, you're not my opponent, so just stay quiet like a little kitty, he said his arrogant words while the pigeon was already passed out on the floor, notwithstanding the pressure, and Rob Lucci just looked at Luffy with hatred. He put the handcuffs on Rob Lucci's arm, preventing him from transforming and even using the 6 styles. Luffy finished by slapping the man on the head, making him fall down passed out, while Kaku and Califa had dazed eyes and a glint of fear with what was happening. Now it's your turn, Luffy said, approaching Kaku, still looking at him fearfully. What do you think you're doing, pirate? The carpenters were angry at Luffy while he continued putting the handcuffs and slapping Kaku on the head, making him also pass out. What do you mean by government agent? Iceberg commented, still kneeling, looking at his 2 employees fallen on the ground passed out, still not believing Luffy's words. You've been investigated for years, Iceberg, Luffy now said, approaching him. You think the government, after Tom's death, would give up on the Pluton project? You're a fool if you think so, Luffy spoke, getting closer. What? Iceberg now said, alarmed, knowing what that meant. Yes, you had agents looking for those blueprints all the time, closer than you could imagine, but you were lucky that the project isn't with you all the time, isn't it? Luffy spoke, opening another smile, leaving Iceberg even more stunned. How do you know this? How did you know there was an agent here? And what proof do you have that they are really what they are? He demanded in a dark tone. You're not in a position to demand anything from me, Mayor of Water 7, Luffy spoke with a tone of disdain. What are you doing? Iceberg asked, seeing Luffy above him and moving his hand. I'm taking your secretary, he said, grabbing Califa's arm. What are you doing? Pirate. HM? She exclaimed angrily, but Luffy gave her a slight tap on the head, causing her to faint the next moment. You see, I have 3 agents from the famous CP9, something that makes me proud, Luffy celebrated as he put another pair of handcuffs on Califa and placed her with the other agents. At that moment, a heavy landing was heard, and Hugo appeared carrying a fainted Bueno. Bueno? Some of the workers knew the bar owner and were surprised to see him being captured like this. Nodding with satisfaction, Luffy said, Good, put these on him. He threw the handcuffs to Hugo, who quickly placed them on Bueno before tossing him among the others. Luffy stopped releasing his haki and turned his attention to the Den Den Mushi, making a call in front of everyone, who still couldn't move. Hello. Luffy heard the frustrated voice of Sengoku on the other side, confirming that the Den Den Mushi was still with the fleet admiral. Hello, Sengoku, I have Rob Lucci, Kaku, Califa, and Bueno captured in front of me, Luffy announced, and Iceberg couldn't help but look stunned. If Luffy's words were indeed true, the one speaking would confirm it at this moment. How much do you want for them? And Doflamingo with the member of Kaido's crew? Sengoku did not deny, still with a frustrated voice. They were agents all this time? Iceberg looked stunned at the 4 captives, but something else also bothered him more. This pirate knew that the Pluton blueprints were not with him, meaning he also knew they were with Frankie. Pirate or government, he could not let what Tom sacrificed his life to protect fall into their hands. The pirate from Kaido is non-negotiable, but I want 3 billion for their lives, Luffy declared. Impossible, 1 billion, we are willing to pay that at most, Sengoku declared. 2 billion, otherwise you won't see them until you accept this amount, Luffy decreed. Sengoku was silent for a while, until he spoke. All right. 2 billion, the exchange will be in Water 7, he said. No, the exchange will be in Enies lobby, Luffy said, knowing that this negotiation would not be peaceful. A conflict could destroy Water 7, so even though he was a pirate, he didn't want to see this place destroyed. All right. In Enies lobby, Sengoku thought in the same line of reasoning and accepted, seeing that the judicial island was close to Water 7. That's good, then we'll talk in 4 days. I hope to see this money at the meeting, Luffy said and hung up the Den Den Mushi. Luffy turned his attention back to his audience on the ground. Some people were watching from outside the company at this moment, terrified to see the city's great heroes fallen on the ground while the pirates seemed to do as they pleased. You see, Mayor. You had government agents right here. We'll be taking them, and we'll spend a few days in this place. We won't cause any more trouble in the city, so don't bother us during our stay, Luffy said. What are you planning? Iceberg asked cautiously. After all, Luffy still had information about the Pluton blueprints, and Luffy was no longer even concerned with him or asking about their location, proof that this pirate really knew where they were. I'm going to see a future Nakama of my crew, Luffy said and returned to Hugo. Can you take them to put in the ship's prison? Tell the others they have 4 days to enjoy the city, Luffy said, and Hugo nodded, taking the bunch of them and leaping into the air to descend to the city. They took them. Some workers murmured, still on the ground, still processing that their friends of years were government agents. After all, they couldn't go against the interest of the fleet admiral and this 750 million bounty pirate. So, I'm off. You can tell the city that we won't cause trouble. My companions like to explore places and will respect your laws if not provoked, Luffy spoke and started to walk away. Wait. You're going to the junkyard, aren't you? Iceberg exclaimed with a nervous heart, knowing he would lose Tom's blueprints. Don't worry, soon, those blueprints will no longer exist, Luffy said and disappeared, flying towards the junkyard. At the Frankie house, the news about the Straw Hats finally reached them. Frankie. The city is in danger. Some men from his gang who were in the city arrived yelling scared while opening the door. What now? Can't you see I'm drinking my cola? If it's to show me another ridiculous ship figurehead, I swear I'll hit you. Frankie growled. No. The Straw Hats are coming to Water 7. The city is in danger. They finally clarified their fears. That crew? Frankie also got a bit scared. After all, who didn't know Luffy and his crew after they went devastating several islands in the Grand Line? What, Monkey D. Luffy, the man who can defeat 3 warlords, 1 vice admiral, and a Yonko's calamity? We're screwed. Frankie's people immediately became scared, running in panic. What if he turns into a monster like in the newspaper? Someone spoke in horror. However, at that moment, the door opened with someone kicking it in. Black Pearl was now arriving at the port. Seeing this person there, they became even more alarmed, wondering what he was doing here. Luffy had finally arrived, and he looked at the perverted cyborg with his mouth open and eyes wide, since his hat was unique. I heard you guys have a good stock of cola here, can I try some? Luffy said, since in this world there was no Coca-Cola, a product he hadn't eaten in a long time, so this famous cola that Frankie drinks piqued his interest. No one answered. In fact, no one could breathe, while Luffy walked into the place with a characteristic smile. Chapter 220, Water 704. Third-person POV. Water 7, first half of Grand Line. Luffy continued walking until he reached where Frankie was, looking at him cautiously. He said nothing as he walked. It was only when he sat down in front of the famous bully known throughout Water 7 that he greeted him. So you're the famous Frankie, he said and continued. Like you, my name is Monkey D. Luffy. Do you mind if I drink your cola? Luffy suggested and didn't even wait for the other's response before grabbing the cola bottle and bringing it to him. The place was in utter silence, as everyone watched Luffy taking the bottle and opening it with the sound of gas. Nobody moved a muscle. It didn't seem anymore like they were in a bustling place like the Frankie house. After all, who would dare breathe in the presence of this monster? Luffy drank the cola calmly, not caring about what was happening around him. You know. This is a bit disappointing. I was expecting a different taste. This seems more like Pepsi. Luffy murmured with a tone of dissatisfaction. Still, it's a nostalgic taste, he said, drinking the rest of the container. Ah, he released the gas-filled breath and turned back to the pervert in front of him. I just made a visit with your friend, Iceberg. A very nice guy, however, naive. I took some of his staff. Iceberg? Frankie finally snapped out of his shock upon hearing Luffy's words. What did you do to him? He asked worriedly. I did nothing to him, but there were some government agents looking for a kind of weapon. They hoped Iceberg had it. Luffy gave a small smile, while Frankie began to sweat. It's a shame they looked in the wrong place, isn't it? When Luffy said these words, a deadly silence took over the place more than ever. Frankie seemed to have lost his footing at that moment, paralyzed by Luffy's words. After all, what was being discussed was the Pluton plans with him at that moment. A moment passed and Frankie finally made a move, jumping back. "I will never hand this over to you," he said, gaining some courage, and pointed his arm with a barrel in the middle of the palm at Luffy, who just looked amused at the cyborg. Before Frankie could shoot at Luffy, a hand grabbed him by the neck, lifting him off the ground while Luffy was already in front of him like a kitten. "You know you can't resist this," he said calmly as Frankie struggled to break free. "Boss Frankie." His companions at the site shouted desperately at that. "We should stop him." One spoke up quickly. "Even if we die here, we'll fight," another said. Luffy was not bothered by them, and around him, a wave of haki was released, making everyone there faint the next moment. Frankie, already scared, became even more alarmed seeing all his colleagues fallen on the ground, with no one else conscious. Luffy used his free hand to open the cyborg's elbow, while he struggled, but in vain. Luffy took the papers inside him and threw him on the ground the next moment. Frankie fell stunned, looking fearfully at Luffy as he looked at the papers. "Let's at least read this." Luffy thought and used his Moa Moa Nomi to read everything quickly in less than 20 seconds and memorize everything. He at least wanted to understand a bit about this weapon. It might be useful for him to do some things with this information. He didn't intend to build a second Pluton. After all, there's already one underway now, and if his theory was correct, the key to activating the military ship, which should be considered a nuclear ship, would somehow be Vivi. After all, everything indicates that the Nefertari D blood has to do with the weapon. But Luffy is still curious about the weapon's skeleton and how it works. He finished reading and looked at Frankie, still glaring at him with clenched teeth. "This weapon is too dangerous to keep. You should have destroyed it a long time ago," he concluded, and picked up a Den Den Mushi. Pointing the Den Den Mushi at the paper while he dialed, "Sengoku, send this video to the world government. Your chances of getting your hands on Pluton end here," he said, and the papers in his hand quickly caught fire, disappearing into ashes. Luffy looked satisfied and hung up the Den Den Mushi. This call would be sent, and using his intuition, he could tell what he did was indeed real. "You see, Frankie, I just did something that could have ended your life," Luffy said, crossing his arms to the man still on the ground. "You destroyed all the plans." He murmured in disbelief. After all, he could not believe that Luffy had absorbed it all. "Yes. Now let's see the others." "I have to introduce you to your new crewmates," Luffy said. "What do you mean by that? HM?" He didn't finish when Luffy grabbed him by the clothes and started to leave, while Frankie tried once more to get out of his grip. At least it wasn't by the neck now. "Hey, answer me. Why are you carrying me like this?" Frankie tried to speak, but Luffy ignored him while kicking the exit door and flying into the air, heading towards the port. "The city is quite empty. I guess that's normal due to our reputation, but it's kind of boring. It's not like we were going to destroy every place we dock," Luffy commented, looking at the closed houses, feeling all the people in the city scared of them. He went towards the Black Pearl anchoring in the port at that moment and approached in the air. Let me go." "No, don't let me go, because I don't want to fall from this height, but put me on the ground." Frankie screamed as he was carried. His crew looked towards the screams in the air and saw Luffy landing on the deck with a man in swimwear, floral clothing, and blue hair. "Luffy, what is this?" Vivi asked, wanting to understand. "This is our new companion, just like Enel. He will be our engineer," Luffy said with a small smile. "Who said I'm your engineer?" Frankie shouted with a comical face after hearing that, despite the scare he took. "Companion? This is just a pervert." Nami crossed her arms and looked suspicious. "Thanks for the super compliment." Frankie seemed happy with that. "That was not a compliment," Nami shouted with a comical face. "Luffy, what have you brought to the crew now?" Lami commented on the side with eyes on the captain. "Don't worry, he's trustworthy. Despite being a weakling now, he can be very strong in the future." Luffy slapped Frankie on the back, who was getting up from the ground, making him fly with Luffy's slap going towards the ship's door. At that moment, Hugo appeared opening the door and saw a man in swimwear flying towards him while screaming. He looked strangely at that and kicked the man, who flew before hitting the mast and falling unconscious. Did you kill him? Usopp shouted, stunned. He's our crewmate? He's injured. Call a doctor. Chopper was scared. Wolf! Wolf! Chaochu barked. Ahhh, that's right. I'm a doctor. Chopper said and went to treat Frankie. Ha 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 ha. It's good that we're still in a good mood, Luffy laughed seeing this interaction and turned back to Hugo. How are our prisoners? Placed in their cells, no chance of escaping, he said, and Luffy nodded. Luffy! I wanted to see the city, but where is everybody? Yuta said, pointing to the empty city. It seems the world is afraid of us. So it's better to get used to it. Told the mayor we're going to stay a few days and we don't intend to cause trouble unless necessary. Soon the city will function again, Luffy said. So I would like to see this place, Robin commented. Yes, I also want to see. I haven't seen a city like this. Shirahoshi shouted excitedly. You all can go, as Hugo said, we have 4 days. I'll deal with Frankie, you can do whatever you want, Luffy said and went to the cyborg all bandaged up by Chopper. Seeing this, many of the crew decided to head to the city, especially the women going to clothing stores and riding carts through the city's rivers, while Zoro, Kuina, and Chaochu stayed with Luffy, some to train and others to sleep as Luffy saw Chaochu lying on the deck peacefully. Luffy approached the bandaged Frankie and slapped him on the head. I swear I had a strange dream that I was kidnapped by a pirate and he made me join his crew. He murmured, waking up, but seeing Luffy in front of him, he started to sweat. Yo! He said with a small smile. What do you want? I'm not going to join your crew. Frankie spoke firmly. You know you don't have a choice, you were with the Pluton plans. Do you really think the government won't go after you after knowing this, hoping you read the contents that Tom sacrificed his life to protect? Luffy asked calmly, and Frankie seemed to clench his teeth. They wouldn't do that. Frankie spoke, and Luffy wanted to laugh at him. Yes, they would, trust me, I have many crew members who hate them to a degree that even scares me, Luffy joked, but there were some whose hatred surprised him after what they had been through, and he didn't blame them. Why do you want me to go with you? Frankie asked sincerely. He didn't seem to see much value in himself as this pirate looked at him. After all, this crew was made of monsters, he would be a useless guy. Don't underestimate your value, Frankie. You have potential, more important than your strength, is your talent. You can come on our journey, we need good engineers, look at this ship, wouldn't you like to study it? Luffy suggested, pointing to the Black Pearl. He would be lying if he said he wasn't enchanted by this ship, which had already appeared in the newspaper a few times with its name. Looking closely, it was quite impressive with its 50 meters. Moreover, wouldn't you like to build a ship for me? I need someone to make a secondary ship for the crew. Can you make this ship for me? I'm willing to provide all sorts of material, how about it? Luffy asked, and Frankie finally had a positive look. I can build a ship for you? Frankie was surprised. After all, no one wanted his skills, and he ended up being a gangster in Water 7. If this pirate wants his work, this is an opportunity for him to fulfill his dream of building the perfect ship. That wraps up this part of What If Reborn in Naruto World. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.